Pledge of Allegiance, if you will join us in standing. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm sorry we were held up in executive session. We are thrilled to see you all and looking forward to this evening. Betty, if you could let the record reflect that the board met in executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, removal of a particular person or persons, and collective negotiations under the civil service law. Dr. Giarrizza, we will start with student and staff.
Very good. So we have this is quite a night. We're going to celebrate our North Shore Pride here. So we are going to start with getting some certificates, yes, and some pens. Get rid of this. All right, so one of the very best things about this time of the year is that there are a million things to celebrate. We are closing up, winding down, wrapping up, gearing up, all of that. And so all of these accolades start coming in, and they have been coming in at a fast and furious pace over the past few weeks. So we were taking student and staff recognition as recently, I think, as a couple of days ago. So we're going to start with the Physics Bowl. So on April 10th, we had 6 students from North Shore High School participate in the American Association of Physics Teachers Physics Bowl exam, which was taken by more than 7,100 students across the world. First-year physics students participated in Division 1, and second-year physics students participated in Division 2. This year, Izzy Lerman, a junior, tied for first place in Region 5 Division 1. Izzy scored the highest out of all participants in New York State and Maryland. And I'm always impressed that we do something for the very first time and we end up like a regional champion. It's really quite remarkable. So Izzy, where are you? We'll take your picture. Come on over. Is his teacher here? Yeah, I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't see you. Sarah Lamar is here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
There are a lot of people.
All right. So those examples of we start something once and we knock it out of the park is the common theme here tonight. This is the first year that we had all of our 8th graders at North Shore Middle School participate in National History Day. I want to thank Seth Gordon for leading that work and championing that work. Well done. And our 8th grade, and Rob Dennis, who was and Brendan Nelson, who were real proponents of this work and champions for it. And so we're going to start with our teachers here. So we're going to bring them up. So Kevin DeHill, come on up, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right. So let me tell you a little bit about they always have to stand next to me, right? All right. So social studies continues to be one of the most important disciplines in our world today. Social studies teachers have a difficult job teaching students history, geography, economics, anthropology, and good citizenship. Tonight, we'd like to honor Kevin DeHill for excellence in social studies teaching. Mr. DeHill has been the lead coordinator of History Day, where all 8th grade students participated for the first time this year. Mr. DeHill's exemplary work made it possible for all 8th grade students to complete historical research by asking good questions and searching for credible sources to develop their own thesis and interpretation of important people and times in our history. In addition to Mr. DeHill's work with History Day, he has set up a powerful entrepreneurship program in our middle school. He works with local business owners and entrepreneurs to create a Shark Tank-like experience for 6th and 7th graders.
Sharks, nice.
Okay. Parents are invited in to see their children dressed in suits to present a new idea for a product or service. We are so proud of Kevin and what his students have accomplished. Please join me in honoring Kevin DeHill. Don't go anywhere. We have some students coming up. You can stay here. And he is on a terrific grade level team with Francis Stokowski, who is in the back here, and Chris Gill, who not here tonight, but also a really dynamic 8th grade social studies team. Thank you to all of you. Okay. Ruben Schoenig, where are you? Come on up here and I'll brag about you for a little bit. So Ruben was one of 200 students to participate in North Shore History Day. His paper, Ray Charles, From a Tragic Childhood to the Creator of Soul, was selected as the top historical paper in our school competition to qualify for Hofstra's History Day competition. At Hofstra, Ruben competed against over 500 students from all over Long Island, and his paper won the African American History Award sponsored by the African American Museum of Nassau County. We want to congratulate Ruben for his scholarship, his diligence, and his passion for history. And you have to see him on a drum play. It is really quite remarkable. You could stay. We're going to take a picture of it. Right? Okay. And so, lastly, Michael Granelli, Nick LaRosa, and Christian Holden. Come on up. Okay. So, these three gentlemen got to their first National History Day, and I'm going to read some stuff, but in a nutshell, not only did they win at the regional level, but they won at the state level. They are the New York State champions for National History Day. Like, in the state. We live in a big state, folks. Right? And their board is to the right here, so if you have some time before you leave tonight, make sure you have a look at it. It's really impressive. Michael, Nick, and Christian have competed against hundreds of exhibits in our school, at Hofstra, and at states in Cooperstown, New York. Their exhibit, entitled The Beginning of the End, The Triumph of D-Day, is a tribute to our nation's veterans. The 75th anniversary of D-Day is coming up on June 6th, and their exhibit proudly honors those that served. Each step on their History Day journey has proven to enrich their lives. Along this journey, they've met and interviewed Post Commander Phil Como, his father, and 95-year-old uncle, who both served in World War II. They also interviewed Paul Stein of Floral Park, who fought on the sands of Normandy. They added each of their words and memories to their exhibit. My grandmother was did you learn about the waves? Yeah, my grandmother was a wave.
Really?
In World War II. It was pretty neat. They won the school competition and finished 4th in Hofstra History Day to qualify for the state competition. At the state competition, they came in first place over all other entries in the state, including the 3 exhibits that finished ahead of them at the Hofstra competition. Right? Now they have qualified for National History Day on June 9th at College Park, Maryland. Their accomplishments have been published in local papers and on our district website. We are really so proud of the 3 of you. Wish you the best of luck at Nationals, and congratulations. Michael? For you. Christian, for you.
Likewise.
Well done.
You're much better.
All right, let's come on a little closer.
Yep, all right. There's always pictures. And to the middle aisle.
Marissa, you got it?
Going good? Congratulations.
All right, congratulations. Well done. Thank you so much. Okay. Do we have any of our FLES teachers here tonight? Naturally. Okay. So how do you become the best elementary language program in New York State? On a Thursday night at 8:15, you're out at a language conference. Anna, come on up. So the FLES program, Foreign Language Elementary School program of the North Shore School District, was the recipient this year of the Sally G. Hahn Memorial Outstanding FLES Program Award for the entire state of New York. This award is named after a longtime member of the New York State Association of Foreign Language Teachers and teacher of foreign languages who strongly believed in the importance of beginning language instruction at as early an age as possible in stressing conversational fluency. The interest earned from Ms. Hahn's bequest to this organization will fund up to $1,000 in monies, which are awarded annually to one or more outstanding school-based FLES programs in New York State. The committee, so they review all these programs, and the committee was impressed with the seamless implementation of our program with language choice, as well as the commitment to communicative learning and authentic learning experiences. Our FLES teachers are Carmen Berg, Jin Wen Kai, Lena Anyufrak, Sen Sen, I call her something else. Yeah, Casella, Wei Huang, Roxy Robles, and David Schultz. He's Spanish and Mandarin, right? They are out learning how to be more terrific language teachers to you. I'm going to present this certificate on behalf of the board and the district to Aguiar, who is a tireless advocate for this program. And your leadership has really made a difference.
It has. We could not be more proud of the FLES program. Thank you so much.
Anna? This is the last one? Okay, and last but not least, Mr. Klabicki. So Mr. Klabicki, come on up. So lest you think this is about your leaving, it is not. Okay. Because we will take, you still have another board meeting, right?
One more.
Okay. Rob and I were talking today about the hundreds of board meetings he's attended over his 16 years. All right. So Rob was selected for the 2019 New York State Association of World Language Administrators Award for being a central office leader. He played a pivotal role in the support and expansion of our world language program, and not only was he instrumental in guiding and supporting the FLES teachers, he was also an invaluable mentor to Ana Aguirre Mady and Medel Soriano, who were lead teachers when this all got off the ground. His mentoring and his valuable insight have continued all throughout the tenure of the FLES program and continue to this afternoon. This award acknowledges his advocacy and promotion of world language in our district, and I thank you very much for your hard work, and I promise you it will continue in strength and good stride. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very, very much. Good.
And I think we'd be remiss not to thank the parents of all the students and the faculty and teachers of all the students that we had up here tonight for all of their tremendous support and bring our students to where they are today.
We do have one more.
Okay,
Schools to watch.
you're right.
Right. So, lest I forget, I'd like to invite Rob Dennis and Brendan Nelson and our Schools to Watch folks up, if you may. So for those of you who don't know, the North Shore Middle School was designated as a Schools to Watch program across the state. So I'm not sure how many there are, but it is a rigorous vetting process that and we invite other schools, other middle schools in New York State to come look at the things that we are doing here so they can emulate that work back in their own districts. And so we had a reevaluation this year, and you are here to present the outcome of that.
Okay.
So
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. My colleague, Dr. Payton, and I represent the National Forum, which is a national organization that does Schools to Watch. He's on the executive board there. And I represent two hats tonight, actually with the weather the way it is. I wish I wore a hat tonight. We're here as a representative of the State Education Department and also as a representative of the Board of the Middle School Association in New York State. It is a very difficult process to go through. It takes about 1.5 years to do an application, to actually prepare the application. The process usually takes about 3 years, and it is not something that's given once and you have it forever. The recognition as a school to watch is given every 3 years, so you have to re-earn it and reapply. So that the history here is the fact that this has now become a culture of this district, and with the recognition for the awards this evening, and congratulations to everyone, I think you'll see that this is why this has been designated, this school and this district, as a school to watch. Again, it's recognition for areas other than academics. It includes academics, but it looks at the needs and how the school district and the school and the middle school staff meet the needs of the middle school students and ensure that everybody has equity and equitable access to the different events and the activities that you have going on. So it's quite an award. There are only 38 schools in New York State out of a possible 1,500. That makes you in the top 2%. And there are only under 450 nationally. So this is a national recognition. The team receives recognition in Washington, D.C. next month. And again, it goes for 3 years, and I'm sure that we'll be back in 3 years. But it's a real recognition for all the things that the community does, the board supports when it comes to the middle school, and what the middle school staff and administration do, along with the parents at the middle school. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You got it. Which is presented by, signed by the Commissioner of Education. We also have a banner that comes from our partners, which are Life Touch and NYSID. And NYSID is a full supporter of the program in New York State. So we have a banner that goes up at the school, which we hope will display.
Maybe some of our strapping 8th graders can help us unravel the banner. Thank you, guys.
Ruben, come on up.
Come on up, Ruben. Thank you.
Again, so your middle school is recognized as one of the best in the nation. So congratulations to all of you.
Where'd you put your plaque?
so much. We appreciate it.
It's very nice of you guys to come all the way down here.
We'll see you in about 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you want to give, I'm going to go through the minutes.
Yeah, if you want to. Okay, sure.
I'll do the perfunctory things, but then.
Sure, yeah.
Trustees, our next action is we need an approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the treasurer's report. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to start by saying congratulations to the board and the community on the successful passage of the 2019 budget, 2019-20. As I always say and write, budgets tell stories, and they definitely reflect our values. This budget is no different, and it will do much to advance the work of our strategic plan over the next 4 years. I also would like to extend congratulations to Sarah Jones, David Ludmar, and Marianne Russo on your re-elections. Well done. I will look forward.
That's very nice. Thank you.
I do look forward to our continued work together on behalf of the students, faculty, staff, and administration of North Shore. So we have one of the busiest nights ever here. We're going to hear from our homework task force. We're going to discuss our world language program. We're going to provide a key update on our literacy audit. As I said earlier, school years they have these hard stops and starts, and this is the time of year when we are managing both at the same time. We're wrapping up 18-19 while positioning ourselves for a successful launch in 19-20. Shortly, it's going to give me great pleasure to recommend Ms. Jeanette Wojcik as Seacliff Elementary School's next principal. Ms. Wojcik currently serves as the lead teacher at the West Side School in Cold Spring Harbor. She is a reading teacher, has served as a classroom teacher at both Lloyd Harbor Elementary and Goose Hill Primary Schools. Raise your hand so I think kids want to see who you are, right? So
There she is.
there she is. Okay. In her 16 years in Cold Spring Harbor, Jeanette has assumed many leadership positions, including testing coordinator, academic intervention services coordinator, and she is currently leads Cold Spring Harbor's new teacher mentor program. We valued her calm, steady, and thoughtful leadership qualities, and that we believe that she will be a very careful listener as she seeks to understand Seacliff's culture. Her words and her actions demonstrate that she will have high expectations that are focused around the core mission of our schools. I have found her to be an outstanding, receptive, and expressive communicator who is keenly focused on excellent teaching and learning. We welcome you to North Shore with open arms and are excited about your start. Please join the SCA on June 14th at the Beach Festival, where the SCA will host a meet and greet, and this will be obviously in a very Seacliff style. Thank you again to Dr. Zublionis for your very fine and careful leadership of Seacliff School over these many years. You have been instrumental in building a better school and a better world in Seacliff. Thank you so much. So I'm also pleased to report that our search to appoint a new principal for Glenhead Elementary is in its final stages as well, and we're on track to recommend a candidate for appointment on June 13. In addition, Dr. Z and I will be interviewing finalists for the Director of Counseling position in the upcoming week, and we'll be ready for an appointment in early July. As anticipated, I want to thank all of the parents and teachers and administrators. Each time we interview candidates, we generally invite 4 to 6 candidates back for committees, and over the course of a short period of time, they interview with about 30 to 40 people over the course of that day. And at the end of the day, we work hard to build consensus around who those finalists will be that come back to us. So it is a really rigorous process, and we really appreciate the time that you give us. Lastly, teacher recruitment across the district is ongoing, and we're beginning to see finalists for open positions, and they will start to appear as recently as tonight on your agendas. We've been watching our kindergarten enrollment, so just as an update, our kindergarten enrollment for 1920 now rests at 161, 60 at Glen Head, 53 at Glenwood Landing, and 48 at Seacliff. So we are right now in that 3 sections per school. We're keeping a very close eye on those Glen Head sections, and we build contingency into our budget to address any staffing needs as we move forward. Our final 1920 staffing is currently being finalized. That's all related to student enrollment and course requests, and that's starting to take its shape. Last but not least, our final meeting of the year will be on June 13, and I will eagerly share my final report on the progress we've made towards our annual goals, our strategic plan. We'll also that night celebrate our tenure candidates and retirees. We do that in the auditorium, and we have a little special something that is new this year that you will come to learn.
Thank you for the
Stay tuned.
cliffhanger. Okay. Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
We'll have the report of the SGO, and then I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda.
That would be great. We have Christian Janae, who is with us tonight as our SGO rep. Thank you very much for being with us.
Hi, everybody. So the school year is coming to an end, and coming up this week and next week we have elections for student government. And next week we will have the actual voting take place, and on moving up day we will be announcing the winners of the election. And at moving up day, before moving up day, all the classes have made a video presentation to show the school year. And the junior and senior classes have made songs for as dedications to each other. And yeah, that's it.
That's right. Sounds great. Thank you so
very
much,
much,
Gus. We
Christian.
appreciate the report. Trustees, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. I'd like to move up our first personnel item to this point in the agenda, the appointment of Jeanette, was it? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second? Second. All in favor? All right, the motion's amended. So,
Okay. So, there's some stuff that's happening here, am I right? Okay.
so we'll,
You want me to lead that? I don't know what's happening.
we'll make we'll make the motion. Or,
All right, student government, come on up. All right. So we have the student government from the Seacliff School here tonight.
which, if you'd like to.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure.
Good evening, Dr. G. Rizzo, the Board of Education, parents, and faculty. Thank you for having us at this meeting. On behalf of the Seacliff School student government, we want to take the time to thank Dr. Z for all his service to Seacliff School over the past 7 years.
As well as welcome Ms. Wojcik to Seacliff School.
No, we'll bring her up at the end.
Ms. Wojcik, we are excited to be here tonight to share this special moment with you. If you haven't been told a million times already, Seacliff is an awesome place to live and learn.
We can't wait for you to see all of the amazing things we do as a school community. There are many things you will learn about us in the coming months. But one thing is for sure, we take our spirit with our sales pretty seriously. So we wanted to give you a head start. Please
accept this welcome bag on behalf of the Seacliff student government. Thank you.
Miss Wojcik, you can come up.
She's going to put on all this stuff.
Is a Seacliff School water bottle, a letter or certificate, and some tissue paper.
Thank you, everybody. I can't wait to be part of the Seacliff community and come learn from everybody.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
We cannot thank you enough, Seacliff Student Government, for that incredibly warm and gracious welcome that you've given our new principal. Thank you so much for putting together that presentation. And with that, trustees, do I have a motion to appoint Jeanette Wozik as our new Seacliff principal?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations and welcome.
So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you very much. So students, if you have, it would not be rude if you wanted to go home and go to sleep.
I will add that we are going to have a number of incredibly interesting discussions now on homework on world languages and our literacy program, but we understand that you need a good night's sleep as well. So
Right.
it is up to you.
So we'll give you an escape hatch.
This is your moment. I just pulled out, I think my motion was just to pull out the one
It
page.
was. It was. I think so. You might. The others will go. Funny how that happens, right?
Okay, we will move on to regular business. Our first discussion, A, is from the presentation from the Homework Task Force.
Very good. So I'd like to work. This is not on. Seth and Carol, who one of the goals that the board had directed us to work on this year was the value to explore the value and purpose of homework K through 12. And so I asked Carol and Seth to co-chair this committee. We put a group of interested parents and teachers together to explore this issue. And tonight they are here to talk with us about their findings from the surveys, from their research, and to make some recommendations forward from their committee to the board. What I think is important for the board to know tonight is that you are going to hear a lot of information, that this is not a night about making final or firm decisions, that we are, hearing what is the work of the committee, and that we will have time between now and the opening of the next school year to operationalize whatever comes to be. So I thank you all for your hard work, and I will turn this over to Seth.
Can you hear me now? Better. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for charging Carol and I with this task. So if you can't see, we do have a presentation over here that I'm going to go along with. So if everyone could see okay? If you do need to reposition yourself, please do. So the Homework Task Force was was a group, a committee of administrators, teachers, and parents. On the screen, you can see that we had a variety of teachers, parents, and administrators that were part of this time. We also did a variety of surveys to try to engage parents, teachers, and students from throughout the community as part of this work. We really did bring a group of diverse stakeholders together with strong viewpoints on homework. And though not everyone, I'm sure, will say that they're got what they wanted, there was a really good feeling about the progress that we were making on such an important issue as homework. The charge of our task force was the following. We were asked to research the value and purpose of homework and propose policies and processes that best support practices for all students. We were asked to develop some recommendations to present to you tonight of what our research and had through looking at research, whether it's articles, books, and scholarly materials, as well as what came out of our community surveys and discussions with teachers, parents, and students to inform our work. We looked at purposefulness, amount, and we looked at how homework is articulated across grade levels, the variation, the impact homework has on home life of children, and the balance of consistency across schools with teacher autonomy. One thing to know about our homework committee is we met a lot. On the board, you can see we actually met 14 different nights throughout the school year from October to May 14th. Most meetings went an hour and a half, and I will say some went longer than an hour and a half, and my group can attest to that. But the one thing that we found together is that the reason why they went so long is we were so passionate about the work, and that we were really excited to talk about it with a community of people that were learning about homework throughout this process. I briefly want to describe how we engaged in this work. We started with a variety of research and decided that the best path at the beginning was to really study what the research said and learn from it and take our time with it. So we did that, and we didn't just start at the beginning. We continued to do research throughout the process. We looked at a variety of sources. So we tried to find studies that would show, were research studies like from Harris Cooper and others. We looked at popular homework authors that have had several books published, like Kathy Vatterott. We also looked through a variety of other studies and books to inform our work. We read articles together as a group. We collected a variety of other ones. It was not uncommon to have an email thread where we would share, I saw this wonderful article at ASCD, everyone take a look. And no doubt the group would respond and read it and bring it to discussion at the next meeting. So we really did try to take our charge as seriously as possible, but also found a passion for it throughout this work. As we did research, we started to believe the importance of gathering perspectives from teachers, parents, and students. So we created a variety of surveys together as a group that we could agree on, and then we passed them along and administered them in each of our communities as part of our research aspect of trying to figure out what was the let's take a look at all the data we have and start to synthesize it. So when we got to March and April, we had a lot of information to go through and to comb, to look at the perspectives of our community, and also put that in place with the research work that we had done. And then we got into the May, and we had some of our recommendations and our ideas that we started to form along the way. We started to put more teeth into and just work together as a group to try to reach some agreements upon what it was that we really walked away with throughout this task force work. So I want to give a little bit of the research here. Most of our time that we spent together, we met as a group and discussed our findings and the information that we had, whether it was from the surveys or from the research we did. We collected a variety of materials. We sought to really make sure that it was a diverse body of findings. So if it was all things that we said that looked like they were steering towards an anti-homework, what were gaps in our research that we need to look for, the things that showed the benefits of homework. So we really tried to canvass and look for a variety of materials that would best capture the diversity of the opinions on homework. We watched a webinar from Kathy Vatterott. We continued to find more articles throughout the way. We talked to local school communities. My son is a first grader in Comac. I talked with the superintendent, Dr. James there, who did a homework study the year before and asked what we could learn, what resources did their community use. And parents and teachers alike were looking for other schools that we could learn from, other policies in different places that we could learn about to inform our work. And as we did that along the way, we continued to find more work that would allow us to get a deeper knowledge. So the recommendations you presented here today would be part of a lot of work on a part of our committee and a lot of thinking that went into the recommendations that we're going to make. The research findings. What I'm going to do in terms of kind of showing the findings today is doing a little bit of fact versus myth. So I would like for you guys to kind of, in your mind, read the statements that I put up on the board and determine whether or not you think this is a fact about homework or it is a myth. So we're going to see which of the myths can you decipher. Because one of the things about homework is we've all had it and we think we're all experts on it. So that's the thing that makes homework so challenging is we've had such experiences of it, whether positive or negative. I'm sure many of the experiences that you can recall, you can have that negative one will stick out in your mind about homework. But there's also those positive experiences that helped you learn or practice, or you used it as a part of home learning to help you prepare and be successful. So the first one we have is the amount of homework students complete is correlated with achievement. That is a myth. Past an optimal amount of homework at the secondary level, achievement either remains flat or declines. There is a breaking point to when homework's value actually has a reverse effect. According to Cooper, the goals for homework in the primary grades should not include improving achievement, as there is almost no impact on student achievement on performance of exams because of homework. The research also says that time spent on homework and decreased sleep can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and fatigue. So there is that concern when we start talking about social emotional learning and wellness of the whole child, that homework often has an impact because of the amount of time spent on it, leading to decreasing sleep. ASCD did a wonderful magazine tribute on teens, and if you can see this graphic on the board, I think it's a powerful one, but it looks at sleepless teens and sedentary teens. And the survey found that only 3% of U.S. teen girls met national recommendations for daily sleep, physical activity, and screen time, and 7% for boys. The daily recommendation of 8 to 10 hours of sleep, 1 hour of exercise, and 2 hours less of screen time. Homework plays a role in all of these parts, whether it's you're up late for doing homework. A lot of times the homework, unless it's designed in a way that it creates you getting up and moving around, is often sitting down and tackling it in that way. And also because of the increase of digital devices, screen time often plays a role if you're doing your homework on a computer, iPad, or other device. So it plays an important role in some of these statistics. When we surveyed parents and teachers, we found that 85% of parents agreed with this statement, and 46% of teachers did. Homework develops responsibility. And this is also a myth. The fact is, currently, there is no research to support the impact on homework and on the development of responsibility. The next one. Lots of homework is a sign of a rigorous curriculum, is often something that we hear. The more work you do, the more rigorous that curriculum must be. This is also a myth. This belief is somewhat related to the idea that it's a Victorian idea that hard work must be good for you and that only meaningful learning must be painful. More homework gives the appearance of increased rigor, but difficulty is often related to the amount of work done by students rather than the complexity and challenge. That's what creates rigor, right? So we're looking at a difference between more and something that is challenging. Good students do their homework. It's probably something that we've heard. This is also a myth. What does the research say about this? Research here primarily talks about the practice of homework as entrenching privilege. It causes educational disadvantages for poor and minority children. Affluent students, students with parents that are home after school, that have quiet places to study, extensive home libraries, and internet access, students with supportive, well-educated parents are more likely to complete their homework. Students without supportive parents, or with single parents or overburdened parents trying to make ends meet, with inadequate home environments for completing work, or parents who are intellectually unable to help them, are less likely to complete homework. The next statement is reading for pleasure increases achievement. Reading things that you enjoy. And that's a fact. Throw that little curveball in there for you. Again, they're all myths. So, one of the things that we'd like to highlight about our research is the importance of reading. Keep in mind that students spend about 900 hours a year in school versus 7,800 hours outside of school. Ideally, students should be reading in both environments. There's incredible opportunity, and I'm going to show you some information about how powerful reading is in terms of student achievement. Reading increases achievement. If you take a look at the statement by Nancy Atwell, you can see the impact of reading on our high-performing students. In fact, she says, the top 5% of U.S. students read up to 144% times more than the students in the bottom 5%. Time spent on reading not only helps achievement in terms of reading, but on all standardized exams. If you take a look at the chart on the board, you could see the amount of time that a student spends reading outside of the school day. And we'll see the amount of words they're exposed to, their words per year, and where they score on standardized assessments based on how much they read. So you can see if a student that reads for 21 minutes a day outside of school will most commonly score in the 90th percentile on these exams, where a student who would only read for 3 minutes would score in the 40th percentile. When you look at numbers and statistics for reading, a lot of times it correlates student achievement directly to how much time students spend reading. And as I said before, most of that time that is available, there's far more time at home than there is in school, but ideally we would recommend it in both places. All homework is good for a student. This is also a myth. This emphasizes, what I like to emphasize here is that not everything has equal value in terms of homework. There are certain assignments or things that have greater value. And as I mentioned just previously, reading is going to be one of those areas that has a tremendous positive impact on student learning. When we look at the statement previously, when homework is not seen as meaningful, it may contribute to disengagement. Marzano, Pickering, and Pollock reported. And John Hattie, and researcher John Hattie reports boredom is one of the largest impacts negatively impacting student achievement. So the quality of the homework does matter. Research also says when students see it as doable homework in both terms of time and content, it may support students' identities as learners and their senses of self-efficacy. If students agree about the value of homework and it is manageable and useful, it will help students. It's important as we kind of look at this that we, as educators, look to ask our students about whether those two demands are being met. Is it doable, both in terms of time and content, and do they see value in it? So it will impact how well it will help them. One of the other things we wanted to highlight is the research from Cooper often looks at the goals for homework in primary grades. I mentioned it, I briefly touched on it earlier. While he does not recommend it being something that you should use to target improving achievement, there are the possibility, and he looks at, that it could help younger students develop good study habits, help students recognize that they can learn at home as well as at school, and begin to foster independent learning. So there are different values to homework necessary than just achievement. But when his recommendations, it should be in short, it should employ materials commonly found in homes, and it lead to successful and engaging experiences. And reading, of course, will be key for all groups. I want to mention some of the perspectives we gathered as we look at our survey data. We surveyed parents, teachers, elementary, middle, and high school students, and we had a total of 2,168 responses. If you take a look on the board, you can see the representation of each of these groups. We were very pleased at the amount of representation that we had from teachers throughout our buildings and district, as well as from students from middle school to high school, that we had a variety across each of the buildings and across each of our communities. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a look at some of the salient points and the information that we learned from these surveys that, to kind of put that in with the research work that we've done. One of the salient points is that the mental health and wellness of students is something that is incredibly important in the information that we found within the surveys. Homework was reported to be a major source of stress by teachers, parents, and students. The majority of teachers and parents reported that they strongly agree or somewhat agree with the statement that students need more time for play, physical activity, and other experiences. Homework is one of those things that's playing a major role in the stress that's going on at home. Reading. One of the things that our committee group did agree on was how important reading is, and also that it should be prioritized in terms of homework. That if there's anything that's damaging that is a last-minute thing, or that students aren't doing the reading, in terms of the value of homework, reading, especially in the early grades, has the highest impact on student achievement. And this matches our research findings about reading, that our community values it as well as the research did. From our parents' surveys, the majority of parents did report that they strongly agree or somewhat agreed that homework provided is meaningful. The majority of elementary parents did report that students receive the right amount of homework, while the majority of high school parents report that the students receive too much homework. The majority of elementary parents did report that the homework that is assigned is valuable for learning, in our elementary, while the majority of high school parents report that some of the homework is valuable for learning. So what we wanted to look at, while the majority is looking at some of the positive aspects of homework, we did notice some areas that we were concerned about. And one of the things that we looked at were spikes that occurred in homework. Harris Cooper, one of the things that he suggested is a gradual increase in time spent on homework as a child gets older. So if you imagine a child in kindergarten with either 0 or a few minutes, and then you scale that up to a 12th grader, he would say that as the child gets older, the amount of homework should grow by a marginal amount. one of the things that we looked at is where there exists of spikes that occurred on certain grade levels when we heard reports from parents and from students that it may exist. The two areas that I'm going to show and highlight tonight were in the 6th and the 11th grade. On the board, just, excuse me, one sec. On the board, you can see the chart that is here. You can see the 5th grade, the 6th grade, and the 7th grade. What I have in those are the numbers as reported as the average number of minutes being reported from parents that students are doing homework. So in the 5th grade, you notice that the average number reported was 51, where in 6th grade it was 90, and then back to 7th grade, it goes back down to 70 minutes. So one of the areas we're looking at is the spike of homework that is occurring in the 6th grade school year. If you see those yellow lines, that would be part of our recommended of where we think a healthy amount of homework lies. So in the 5th grade, around the 30-minute mark, and in the middle school age, around the 45-minute mark. So that's kind of an expectation of where we think is a healthier number versus to where we are currently in terms of total minutes spent on homework at outside, obviously at outside. Another chart or graph I'd like to show you here is on a typical school day, how many minutes does a student spend doing homework in the 6th grade? The yellow line, as I said before, represents about 45 minutes. So if you are below that yellow line, you're below the average number, below a maximum number of minutes that we would recommend. The blue things that stick up, the little things that stick up above the yellow line represent how many students that are reporting homework minutes in excess of a maximum number that we would recommend. So each one of those blue lines represents a different student who responded to the survey. The next chart that you can see on here represents, if you look at the under 60 minutes, these are the amount of 6th grade students that are reporting that they have fewer than 60 minutes, and the frequency over there on the left side. And then the students that are reporting that they have over 60 minutes a night, and the frequency of that. So it looks at the differences of reporting from different students, but also you can see where students are falling in terms of how many minutes of homework that they're spending at night in the 6th grade. Another area that I wanted to highlight tonight was the spikes of homework in the 11th grade. If you take a look at the chart on the board here, you can see that the mean and median for homework in the 11th grade is right around 180 minutes or 3 total hours of homework a night. These are for AP and IB students. And many times when we talked to them, they said that they were hitting a homework wall, saying that while some would say it's important, but too much is counterproductive. Looking at the amount of homework for these students, and these are often our highest achievers and students that are most excited about learning, reporting an average of 3 hours of homework a night. If you take a look on the board on the next graph we see here, you can see the 2 lines. There's a yellow and a blue line, as well as the blue lines that stick up. The blue lines are the reports of each individual student that make up the mean and median. The yellow line is the 100-minute guideline that we would recommend of where we think should be a maximum proposed for students. And the red line represents Kathy Vaderat's 2-hour limit, which she recommends as a maximum, or sees as a maximum, rather than recommends it as a maximum, sees it as a place where the achievement levels start to decline for students. So any of the blue lines that are above either the blue and the, especially above, or sorry, above the yellow, but especially above the red, are at a level where the amount of homework they're doing each night is actually going to show a decline in student achievement, according to some of the research that we studied. So I'd like to kind of take a look, now that I've tried to share some of the research that we did, as well as some of the survey findings we have, some of our recommendations for homework. The one thing that we would like to recommend is that the outcome, that one of the things that we really think is important is that we're creating healthy and successful students, that we're not sacrificing one of those in service of the other, especially if we are sacrificing healthy students for students that are super high achieving students, that there's a dangerous level that can lead to stress and anxiety here, and that most of our research would suggest the amount of time that they're spending is not actually helping them. So some of the things that we're going to recommend is community education, to work with teachers in professional development. Part of our goals, as we said, not all homework is equal value, is look at what are the most purposeful types of homeworks that we should assign. How can we take efforts to reduce stress, which might be having to do with time, flexibility, and frequency of assignments. And in order for us to understand if what we're doing or any changes that we recommend or make are making a difference, is to collect feedback, again, from students and parents to see, are we producing healthier statistics and numbers? One of the things that we submitted to the board was a recommended revision of the homework district policy 4730. We created a policy based on our research created by our task force. I want to highlight some of the key recommendations within it. One of the things that we found incredibly important in our work is prioritizing choice and interest-based reading of literature for students, particularly in the early grades, as that had the highest level of impact, of positive impact on students. In terms of education, we would like to provide information and education to teachers, parents, and students about the value of reading. We want to make sure we stress as loudly as we can the importance of how much it does in terms of helping students with not only being successful in terms of student achievement numbers, but the values, the things that you learn from reading. One of the things we would recommend is to investigate ways to ensure purposefulness of homework so as to advance the spirit of learning, curiosity, and inquiry among students. One of the things that we believe that is the goal of a school education is really to set a better, and I'll frame it this way. I think part of our mission is to really set a better goal for homework. That we would really like homework that is creating a spirit of learning, curiosity, and inquiry, rather than just reinforcing what happened in class. That idea that this is supposed to advance home learning, the desire to go learn on your own, and that this should be the goal that we're striving for with the work that we're recommending for students. Because if we're undoing that, then we're undoing a love of learning indirectly by what we might assign. One of the things that we think would be incredibly important would be to engage all teachers in professional development with respect to homework. We think there's a variety of things and of the bullets on here that would be helpful. When I talked with Jim, who's one of our parent members and he assistant superintendent at New Hyde Park, we had talked about there's no homework class for teachers in college. There wasn't a direct class from it. That a lot of it you learn from what you had done and then what you experienced with students and how they're performing in your class. We think it's important to provide teachers with what the current research on homework says, as well as ways that to reduce stress placed on students, families, and teachers. So sometimes it's unknown or you only hear about it in pockets when you're in the classroom of what's going on at home with homework. We think it's important to review the recommendations of what is the homework policy with teachers. Importantly, of what the PD that we would recommend is really providing teachers with time to collaboratively work to design purposeful homework that will interest students. It's important to provide that time of what is the most interesting work of our discipline that we can really give to interest students. And if teachers are given that time to work with their colleagues, they will create the assignments that we think will help be informed by the research, but will interest students for a love of learning. At the same time, we think it's important to provide time for teachers of the same grade levels or subject areas to discuss and reach agreements about homework. If you find that there's of a grade level and there's one teacher that's assigning more, like what is that impact having on the student or the overall homework experience of that grade level or that program? It's talking about what are some things that we can agree on together, and having that time will be important for teachers. Also is what can come about that sometimes is the idea that homework doesn't need to be assigned every night. When are the most purposeful times that you need it is that you don't have to see it as an obligation. So the stress and the importance that it doesn't have to be every night. And to encourage self-reflection. How well is your homework working for your students? How do they see it? If you are reflective in that, it will give you a better sense of how that experience is going. One of the things that we think would be important for the recommendations or any actions that the board takes on our recommendations is really giving teachers time. If it's going to start this school year or when is it going to be delivered? How are we going to best help teachers? How are we best support changes in anything of the homework policy? So looking for opportunities to do that in a way. We said what opportunities may lie in superintendent's conference day or other opportunities, and how can we provide ongoing support. One of the areas of recommendation that I wanted to highlight was some of the teacher actions that I think will create more healthier homework levels and reduce some of the stress that's here. One of those actions is regularly eliciting feedback from students on the purposeful amount and flexibility of homework assignments. Is it meeting those criteria? So if teachers engage in that, how are your students feel about your homework? Do they see it as the amount is okay? Is the teacher flexible? Are they giving enough time for the assignments? To check in with your students about that is an important step. Communicating with grade level and department colleagues about homework. What are the practices that are going on across the department and across the grade level? And knowing that so you understand what part of that pie of the overall homework piece that you have, and is that a number that's healthy? Another area is we think it's important is to really collect information from students about important events, stressors, and competing factors that play a role in creating decreased time pressure. Those individual relationships that many of our teachers do so well is use that information as you talk about what's coming up to help understand what are the demands that are going on there. I mean, there's a lot of things that I will recommend too in terms of our administrators that can help support that, but just those conversations you might find out, oh, here's something that's really big, and is my homework that night going to interfere, or is it going to create more stress and anxiety? Because a lot of times the complaints come from those moments of real high anxiety, and if we can be proactive in trying to find them, we can reduce those moments of where they do bubble up. And also the flexibility of homework is an important piece. If things can be given in advance to give students more time, are there differentiated options? This might help go to the idea of interest for the learning. Are there different ways a student can show that? And some recommendations for administrators. We believe it's important to review the consistency in general amounts and types of homework across grade levels to see how consistent is it. To review the purposefulness of homework assignments. Consider a shared homework calendar in the high school, which might include important events to inform teachers and students of workload. How can we keep that information available and fresh? And review and enforce with teachers the Board of Education policy which prohibits teachers from withholding recess or lunch. We had a lot of self-reported information about recess or lunch being taken away. Most of the conversations that we had about it, I think there are reasonable explanations behind, like if we had said if a student was the last day to hand an assignment and it's in 0 or something else and using that time. So we know in many ways that if there are self-reports, it could underlie reasons that were there in the benefit of students, but if there are things that are being done that takes away recess from students or lunch, that there is a Board of Education policy that is meant to prevent that. And are there alternative ways for a student to complete that? One of the things that we want to continue to investigate was other ways in which we could decrease stress associated with homework. This could be a variety of practices. I've highlighted a couple here that I'll show. One is just the amount of nights a week. How often is it given? Do you ensure adequate time and flexibility? Do you provide homework options, a homework menu, particularly in the early grades? Do you develop opportunities for students to manage their time in completing assignments? You talk about how you would recommend developing in these assignments and how you would give time for it. And limit homework in kindergarten to opportunities for the student to read alone or with a parent. With the kindergarten time is really important to start to begin to develop that love of reading that will carry over into student achievement throughout their years of schooling. One of the things that we would recommend, and it's a difficult thing to recommend, is when you look at the times of homework. And the research that Cooper did that kept going back to is the amount of time, because it is a tough thing to judge. So we understand that, and we understand the difficulty of constraining these times as well. But one of the reasons that we make these recommendations is because of the health and wellness of students, that we really want the amount of homework to be limited, and to believe that parents are going to provide naturally enriching experiences for their child in addition to the learning that the teachers do. That it's a partnership between teachers and parents, and that the amount of time spent is going to be used on really what is the most effective, what is the most beneficial for student learning, and that the parents and students will use that time wisely. So we highlighted some of these minute recommendations on the board here. We didn't put kindergarten on there in terms of homework. We really just recommended is reading with your child, that's the valuable piece. And that's really what we recommend when we put the 10-minute guideline for first grade. That is also for reading. As we start to get into the second grade, we looked at the value of reading and math facts that were important for student development in that part of the grades. We looked at grades 3 through 5 as the 30-minute time cap. The middle school being around 45 minutes. High school, with the exception of AP and IB courses, around 60 minutes. And then the AP and IB courses, about 20 minutes per course, with a recommendation of having no student taking more than 100 minutes of homework per night, which is an hour and 40 minutes. So these were some of the time caps that we had discussed at much length. And as a group, there were a variety of opinions kind of going into looking at that research from Cooper, but this is ultimately some of the work that we agreed upon as a group of what we think would create a more healthy environment for students to complete work at home that doesn't lead to some of the increased stress, anxiety, and lack of sleep that may result from the amount of time that students are engaging in extracurricular activities on top of the homework that is assigned on each night. Another important piece to this too, that I don't want to forget to mention, is the importance of parental education. We believe it's incredibly important to have parents as partners in this journey, and we would like to provide and encourage parents to avail themselves of learning opportunities, focus on the research of homework and the associated best practices. We think it's important to include learning about the research on homework as possible as something like back to school night, where we have parents that are most frequently there to learn about it. Providing opportunities where only a few parents show up is something that we would not want to encourage. So what are the events that are really going to bring parent members to be excited to learn about it, and opportunities to help support the work that goes on inside the school, and the opportunities that we think would be really good for students. Another part is the provide education and guidance on things like overscheduling, having too many things outside of the school day. The homework load of selecting classes that might be all AP classes. What is that impact going to be on a student? And how to help with homework. One of the things we found is that parents are asking questions of how can they be helpful in that regard. What is too much? What is not enough? Where does that lie? And then when issues do arrive, what are effective ways to communicate with teachers to let them know if their child is either having difficulty completing the homework or is spending far too many minutes per night on homework, and just learning about what might be going on. And the teacher is that best resource to help navigate that, because as a teacher myself, I experienced this parent would call me and say, my son was spending 80 minutes on an assignment. And I might say, it was only meant to be 10 minutes. What were they doing? What were they doing? And they may have misinterpreted the assignment. So those opportunities and really creating effective communication to best understand what is expected without jumping to any conclusions that might be inaccurate. These are some of the resources that we used. I can tell you that we spent a lot of time and thought that went into our work throughout this school year, and these are a synthesis of our recommendations and the findings that we had as we went through this journey. So I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to speak tonight, and I'd like to thank all the committee members and Carol Smythe who worked together on putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, thank you all for the tremendous amount of work that obviously went into this. And I think most importantly, as part of that, thank you for all the research and the data that was compiled to support the presentation that we just saw. It's just tremendously helpful for all of us. And thank you for a homework vision that fits with what we all know is our district's mission statement too. I thought that was a really important point that you made. But I do want to see if our trustees have any questions or comments on the presentation. I think they do. They're all touching their microphones.
It's like Jeopardy almost.
Tim, do you want to?
Well, Marianne.
Marianne?
Doesn't matter. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting to me as a parent that much of this resonates with my own experience in the district, especially the 6th grade and the 11th grade spikes. It almost felt like they had to be initiated into the middle school by being burdened with any number of projects which were not really meaningful projects. And 11th grade, it was IB year, 5 IB courses. It was really a nightmare. And my own experience with students up all night and not being so pleasant the next day. 2 things that I will say from my experience, which I think you touched on, is the importance of a Google Calendar at the high school, because they really operate in silos, and there's no communication between the different entities, and frequently these kids are in the middle of concerts or midterms, AP exams, sports season, and they're getting hit from all the teachers at all sides. And again, some of that homework, like, I don't know, defining 300 words at the end of the year in IB history class, not very meaningful. So this has been talked about for 6 years. It's really important that you implement that and go forward with that. My other comment would be, and you touched upon this also, would be now that my children have gone on to graduate school and college, that the syllabus that was given to them at the beginning of the year was so critical for their success at university. And I don't know why we can't do that when you're talking about college level courses. These students are, unlike college students that have a lot of free time on their hands, many of them are in sports, the arts, clubs, so they're starting their homework 9, 10 o'clock at night. If they had a syllabus at the beginning of the year that told them what topics were being covered, when papers were due, long-term assignments in particular, they could plan around their activities in the same way a college student plans around their day. And I think it's not only important for their own health and success, but that would be a meaningful way for them to learn how to manage their schedule. So when they hit that first year of college, they already have that skill set. So that would be my comments as a parent. Thank you very much for all of your work. It really, like I said, resonates with my own personal experience as a parent.
Straight down the table if you like.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just had a question and some comments. Was there any discussion concerning the importance of feedback from teachers on homework assignments? And just in terms of surveying students, whether students feel as if they're getting feedback from teachers. So you're looking at whether or not we found out about what type of feedback students were getting on their individual assignments or from? Right. Are there comments, grades? We didn't look into that within the scope of our research of what was there. Because I do think when students are looking at assignments and considering whether or not they're purposeful or meaningful.
I'm sorry, one of our recommendations was that feedback or homework be given in a timely manner. One of
right.
the survey questions of students was actually, and teachers, what do you do with homework? Do you give feedback? And so that was part of our work. I don't know that it was a major theme, but it was definitely something.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't seeing it in here. That's why I was looking for it. The overall recommendation, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In the actual recommended policy itself that we didn't necessarily go through, one of the things, and it was in the old policy but not as spelled out, was the idea of timely feedback. So when homework's given, if it's important enough to give, it should be important enough to give feedback for, and differentiating that from grading, right? The idea that we want feedback as homework is best done when it's formative, so inform students, inform teachers of how instruction or how things are going, so that feedback is a critical part of it. But I think in the first part of it is we didn't look at the individual assignments themselves of what was being given. Okay, and the I'm assuming that you would consider studying for exams to be homework. Correct. So with the 20-minute guideline, is that a reasonable expectation that a student studying for an AP physics exam is going to spend 20 minutes studying for? Well, one of the things that we were looking at was the idea of is spaced versus massed practice. Like a lot of the research was very much against the idea of cramming. So the idea was looking at how do you space that practice, that studying out over time as an important feature here. So it wouldn't be recommending to study only for 20 minutes, but recommending that you decide how much time you need to study over time for that exam to be best prepared as part of it. Right, and one of the recommendation that I would make, so that students don't have 3 exams that they have to study for in a single day, is to adopt something that my district does, where I teach, which is to have testing days, so that for each of the 5 core subject areas, one subject has Monday, another Tuesday, Thursday, through the days of the week. My testing day this year is Tuesday. So there are never any conflicts that students will have. And so it ensures that they're not cramming for 3 or 4 tests on a single night. And so I would, make that suggestion at the high school and the middle school level, certainly.
Trustee?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, though, very much. Was that very good?
Thank you, Seth. That was really good, and thanks to the committee and all of the hard, obviously. How many days did you meet?
More than we can count.
Just to coordinate everybody's schedules. Thank you.
2:15, something
That's a
like
lot.
that. Yep.
That was very generous of your time. I have just one comment that I'd like to add in terms of our student population, that not only are these students that we're seeing, and we see them each meeting, the wonderful things they're doing. So they are a little bit overscheduled. I think it can be apparent to that. I'm a parent who was a very overscheduled student and was up until 2 in the morning, most evenings. But there are students who work as well. So let's not forget about some students and families that the students, right after school will go right to a job at the ice cream place or a supermarket around here, and they're working until 3 until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. So let's remember that they're there. And again, we don't have to state it too many times, but it is a little bit counterintuitive if we are looking at improving our services to kids in terms of their mental health, and being aware of that. This is counterintuitive, overscheduling them with homework. Also, we're forgetting about our music department. I would think that most of our music instructors require a certain amount of practice per night, so it'd be interesting to get some feedback from the music department on how they assign homework and what their expectations are for practicing their instrument or practicing their voice. So let's not forget about that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Trustees to my left? Either?
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very informative. When you looked at the stress effect, I know we brought up other pieces. Students have extracurriculars, they've got sports, they've got music. But did the idea of looking at screen time and time on telephones come into play? I mean, there was a piece that I saw in the news this morning about how high school students are becoming, they're coming to school more tired and they're very stressed because they're staying up all night on their phones, you know, and parents are having to go into the rooms and make sure they're not using it. So in what you're doing, was there much discussion about looking at time management and working on time management skills for these students?
I think there's a variety of things that do look at it. We didn't specifically study the impacts of screen time, but there were a lot of issues that started to become things that you would look at because it's part of that time that occurs outside of home and what's going on. And you know, the role of screen time is that increasing, you know, is what's happening with a lot of our students and monitoring it. I think part of our recommendations, and I think this would be part of more of a broader thing, would be the idea of looking at how best to educate parents on how to help their students manage their time. But also I think it's important for our educators to help students manage that as well and teach them the skills at different, you know, at age levels where they're starting to take greater awareness of it, to build that independence, but also the support that if they are, you know, they spend a night cramming too much because they didn't prepare, what's the impact that that'll have on them in terms of their overall health. You know, is a lot of times we do certain things because, you know, we want to be really successful, but what's the impact that has? And helping students understand that, because, you know, you can't gain back sleep, you know, by sleeping more the next night, but how well do our students understand those? I see those more and more of the overall social and emotional well-being, you know, and I think homework it becomes an area that sometimes you target because of its large role in that what happens in a student's daily life outside of our school time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Seth. So I was really pleased to see all the work you guys put into this. It's really impressive. When I first proposed this, I'm so glad the board decided to take this up as a topic for this year, is because it certainly was clear that as a district, we were not aligned necessarily from class to class or building to building or grade to grade with what we were doing. And I really wanted it to be, was hoping, and I'm more than pleased at what we got, that it was research and data driven in terms of what we got. And what you reported to us today. So again, thank you. I didn't meet with myself 14 times during the year, but I did do some parallel research, and really what I came up with is that there doesn't seem to be a real consensus on a lot of contemporary philosophy about where homework should be. Certainly certain things emerged. Homework for homework's sake, as you well pointed out, is counterproductive. And certainly after a certain amount of time, whatever that sweet spot is, there's a law of diminishing returns at which students are having really a negative effect on their learning. And of course, their social emotional well-being and their enjoyment of being in school and being part of this. And once that turns, I'm sure you certainly know this as an educator, it's much harder to turn it back around. One thing that came across that I wanted to ask you about was, almost everyone agrees that reading is the fundamental critical skill, not just the reading for reading's sake, but also the way it, as you well pointed out in your findings, informs and supplements all the other types of learning that they're doing. What I hear a lot in the district is that reading and homework is somehow presented as a chore and as a box to tick off for the amount of time, and that we're not somehow inculcating the love of learning that's going to stick with kids as they become young adults and then adults. So I'm not sure how we do that.
Yeah, it's a challenging area, if I may. One of the things that we looked at is the idea of the assigned amount of homework or of reading. Like the idea that if your student enjoys reading as something a part of their free time, that that's not something we would say students shouldn't read, right? But the idea of what is assigned, when we looked at a homework, whether things that we saw that were assigned. So if you wanted students to read 30 minutes in their independent reading book, that we shouldn't see that as like an add-on. Because what ended up happening is you might have a situation where each class is getting their slice of homework, and now the student's expected to read for an additional 30 minutes on top of that. Now it just looks like it ends up creating a much wider amount of homework. So when we were creating the reading as part of the idea of the time cap, is looking at that's what's assigned. If students have the natural love of learning and reading, and then that would be something that we would encourage regardless, because we think that's time well spent. But in terms of what's assigned is that different part of it.
And I think the idea of it being part of what's assigned, again, whatever that number is in the eventual policy, is important. But I also think, from my perspective, seeing it as different necessarily than a spike. Those of us have kids in our homes know that at some night they may want to sit down and read for 40 minutes because they're really into the book. And some nights they will not pick that book up. And so the idea of somehow within a X number of minutes they have to get a portion of that for reading every night uniformly to avoid spikes might not be as organically productive as saying we want you to read a certain number of total minutes in a week, for example. So I appreciated that. A couple other comments that I took from the presentation. Quality of the homework obviously is much more important than the quantity, but I'm not sure they're necessarily dependent on each other. One thing that struck me was that elementary parents as a whole in your survey seem satisfied with the amount of homework. And another point of data that you presented was that teachers felt that their homework that they were assigning was either somewhat or very meaningful. Parents did not have that experience. So I don't know whether that, and I would not venture a guess, whether that is parents not necessarily valuing or understanding the value of that homework, or potentially PD being used in a different way to help provide more personal.
One of the things that we found is important is that communication from the teacher to parents of what is the value of this assignment, and thinking about how can that be stressed, whether that's at a back to school night or other events where you have a variety of parents, is how can you stress that this is really the goals of it and this is really how it's going to support student learning, just as seeing to help be more on the same page. And I think there's a general, when we look at teachers assigning meaningful homework, that I think that's what our teachers are doing. They believe they're assigning everything that is meaningful for student learning, and we are a district that has high achievement. So I think one of the things we'd recommend is just kind of re-looking at our homework practices and seeing what are the best elements of what we're doing and what might be things in areas that we could cut as an area to help relieve some of the stress that's going on, and really kind of being really smart about those choices and giving teachers time and the ability to talk with their peers about that, I think would be a really positive thing to kind of help with that stress level that we see in the results that we've looked at.
That's what I hope comes out. And certainly there's some degree where, doing a bunch of multiplication at some point is helpful. These kids, it's rote learning, and it helps the kids catch mistakes and whatnot. But obviously, it's not necessarily where it needs to go. So I'm glad that's going to be coming out of this. And of course, once that eventual policy is finalized, the degree to which we monitor that across grades, within the grade, across buildings, certainly at the elementary level, and also at the high school, and in coordination with various classes, as some of my other trustees have mentioned, is going to be an ongoing challenge. But you're up to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to the committee again. Appreciate it.
I had a couple of questions. So I think, I don't think anyone was surprised to find out that reading was important, but nonetheless, some of the specific statistics you provide were very interesting, that even like 21.1 minutes of reading a day would put you in the 90th percentile feels very achievable and very striking. when, I don't know if it was here, but in some of the backup material we had, when you looked at, in contrast to that, when you looked at the secondary homework, it indicated sort of like the purpose and time spent in secondary homework was primarily studying for tests in class and for external assessments, and likewise students reported that it wasn't interesting, right, or engaging. And that seems really very deeply at odds with the idea that reading is important. And you're just right, as a parent, even thinking back on what secondary students do as homework, right, it's not reading, right, it's these other tasks. Even for English classes, right, we're not consuming some tremendous number of books, so I thought that was interesting and not is highlighted in some of this. The idea that we could be assigning more homework in 11th grade to the point where it's counterproductive to achievement is disturbing. The professional development piece struck me as very important. And I was interested in this idea about not just, I think the feedback on the homework was an interesting point you guys made, and about the timeliness, but also how teachers do or don't use it in their grading strategies. I feel like you hear a lot about that there's sort of these consequences of various kinds for not doing homework, and not necessarily supports or rewards or, for, right, having done the homework. And I'm interested in how that intersects with grading policies and how kids feel about that piece too.
I know one of the challenges is if homework is graded, it puts it on a student's higher priority list, right? Because they know that that's going to matter for their overall GPA. So it creates a kind of a competition where this homework is most important to do because it's graded, rather
this
than
homework versus that.
rather than this is what's most beneficial. When we can agree that reading should be a high priority because of its overall impact on achievement, but if kids are all reading their different books, or they're reading a variety of different things, or you don't necessarily want to kill the love of reading by, you're going to take a quick quiz every time you walk in here, right? The homework that is being graded kind of escalates in terms of value for a student, which would be counter to what we're finding here. So a lot of the best practice in homework is the idea that it's a formative, that it's meant for practice, that it's meant to be there to inform the teacher of how well the student's learning, and opportunities for students to reflect on how well are they doing. So if they need that time to go and study the material, then that's a good reflective. How well do I know it now? So that idea of it being a formative tool is much better than it being a tool that is a competition for points.
Right, and I think what I heard recently was a couple of students sort of, I guess, complaining that like if they didn't do the homework, they got in trouble, but there was no, if you always did it, it was like, you were supposed to, and that felt, unfair. Did we look by any chance at students with IEPs or disabilities and their homework loads separately? Because you can say homework's 20 minutes, but if your issue is attention and focus, it's an hour and a half, all night.
Does anyone want to take
Yeah, we did collect all the demographic information, and many of our conversations were about 10 minutes for one student, it might be 60 minutes for another student. So beyond the time recommendations, that's where we really wanted the feedback loop in terms of the parents and the students and the teacher. So it doesn't become this assignment that may take 20 minutes for this student takes 80 minutes for another student. So I think that was really important in the professional development piece for teachers.
If I could add to that, and I think that would be a good moment to exchange information with those special ed teachers, and even just to look at a student's IEP, because many IEPs should be written with modified homework because of a child's particular diagnosis, or if they have ADHD and attentive type. Those are the things that they take into consideration in constructing the IEP. So it might be important maybe to note or research attention and fidelity to the IEP by those general ed teachers.
Yeah.
And special ed teachers, if they have, in resource room, those are the things that can be modified in resource room.
Yeah, and that's part of what we also mentioned is that healthy dialogue between parents and teachers is, rather than it being the 10th night in a row that your child is spending 2 hours or 3 hours of homework, is to say, here is something I've noticed at home. I'm wondering if you could help me understand or help me with this issue that we're having. That idea of coming from a place of inquiry rather than, a place of, look at how much this teacher is giving. I think that's the idea, is that, when you assign homework, you don't know how much you can take each individual kid. So by collecting feedback from students and parents, it can help inform to see if it's a healthy number.
And with Tim's point on testing days, some districts also have, I think, calendars that list days of religious observance that cover more holidays than just the official which days we're off, to avoid inadvertently impacting what may not be a tremendous number of students, but impacting students on very important days.
That should be accommodated.
I think the point of having the days of religious observance is not that students should be accommodated so much, because they would be. I don't think anybody would say, if you called a teacher and said, last night was an important evening for us and my kid couldn't do the homework, they would say, okay. I think the point is that we probably have a significant enough group of people who don't want to have to constantly ask to be accommodated.
No, I agree with you.
I don't think that's how you meant it, but I wanted to be clear.
Yep, that is exactly. So my point was we should accommodate that in a broad sense, not in a specific sense. I think what we are starting to get at in a meaningful way is the choices that we are making about how we use time and what we ask students to do with their time. So they are busy all day long. They are cognitively busy all day long. They tend to be busy after school in various and sundry activities. And I think it was your point, Marianne, right? So when you get home at 9 o'clock, like, when do you eat? When do you watch some TV? When do you hang out with your family? You get back on that hamster wheel for the rest of the night. And so something has to give here. And so what I want to see happen here, so I like this structure of, we're going to have some limitations on what we believe is a system in terms of homework is concerned. I think we also need to be thinking about that whole reading piece as well. I think it's vital and it's important, but I don't know about any of you, but there are some nights where I'm just simply too tired to read for 30 minutes, and I wouldn't want students penalized for not doing that. So there might be ways, I don't know what the answer is tonight. I want to work with the teachers and the administration on what that ultimately looks like. But I think there are some constructs that we might be able to think through that maybe more elegantly addresses our goal of having kids be lifelong learners and lovers of reading. That's not so assign-y and mechanical. So I'd want to.
Well, right. It's complex. You don't want them to feel it's an assignment. You want them to feel like they want to, and that they have the books that they want to read, and that it's infinitely complex.
I think there's, really a fine line there. There's two things. One, I was talking about, my kid was a theater kid, and he was in 3 or 4, I think it was 4 different ensembles. And so he had all sorts of special rehearsals, and then he was the lighting director. So when they get home at 10 o'clock at night, after being there at 7:30 in the morning, and they have to now start into homework, even if they want to go to sleep, they can't go to sleep because the wheels are still spinning. So, and then they get up the next day exhausted, and it just all escalates. The thing about reading what they want to read, which I noticed in there, I think that's important on a certain level because you want to encourage them to read, but I don't want to give up on the idea of encouraging kids or mandating certain reading, because I think students, all of us, tend to read what we like to read, right? But a student may not know that they like a genre or an author, unless you expose that to them, unless you mandate that kind of reading in the classroom, it's not going to happen for them. So, I mean, some student may not pick up an autobiography or a book of poems, but they should all be exposed to all that. So when we're encouraging kids to read, we should also encourage them to stretch their limits and their boundaries and to read materials that they would not otherwise be inclined to read.
That's true. So we always have units of study around fiction, nonfiction, autobiography, whatever it might be. Those won't, short stories, poetry, those don't go away. What I believe the spirit of what you were addressing was reading for the sake of reading, not reading to replace what is in the curriculum. Is that
Yeah, I think it's important
fair?
that kids are enjoying what they're reading.
Right.
So do you have, would you have feedback that this is something that's enjoyed?
Right.
Do you have that information that, the study looks at, reading for pleasure as a really important ingredient?
Right.
Particularly in the beginning, as kids are learning the love of reading, that's an important part, that they can see a variety of things. But I don't think anything would discourage having a variety of different opportunities and exposing them to texts on different opinions or authors to open and broaden that.
Right, and we'll still have our core text, our anchor texts within and throughout the curriculum. That this will not change. So, we'll keep working on this and implementation. Over the next, we'll be ready for this to be operational in September.
Okay. Good. Then one last tremendous thank you to all of you. I know we have a huge turnout from the committee tonight, so thank you from all of us.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. Thank you all very much.
And there's more. Next up, we have we've only just begun, really. We have our K-12 World Languages Analysis and Action Planning.
All right.
I was like, I couldn't see her. I
Yeah,
was
so we've got a couple of other little things to do with you tonight. So Anna, why don't you come and hang out with me? I'm going to sit there. You're going to sit here. I'm messing with you.
It's like she's Rob would pull up a chair. It's just,
I was going to go sit in the audience and you could sit here. Is what I was Okay. So, hello again. We're going to be like Waldenstadt tonight. Right? Yeah? Okay. All right. So we don't have a PowerPoint or anything tonight to share with you, but one of our goals this year was to look at both an internal reflection of one of our academic programs and then an external assessment. Can you not hear me?
I mean, kind of.
Okay. Better?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll start over. So when we set our goals for the year, we set up an internal assessment of one of our academic programs and an external assessment of one of our academic programs. And we decided to look at our world language program internally, and that springboards us and sets us up for what is to possibly occur in the 1920 year. It's a year of self-study. And then Rob Klebicki in a few minutes will talk with us about where we are with our external audit of literacy, which is that data collection, I think, concluded today. Yeah. So what we first want to do is thank our teachers, thank Anna, and our administrators and the board for supporting such a robust language program. We are one of few places that starts language instruction in kindergarten, and then that builds through grade 12. So we're going to start with, so as we go through this, be thinking as you go along about thoughts that you have about what we're doing, feedback for planning for next year. We'll take that information. We'll try to keep this, cogent so we can keep moving, and then move forward into our planning for next year. All right, so Anna, why don't you start, and then we'll go back and forth a little bit. Sounds good? All right.
So first, I also want to thank the board for your continuous support of world language studies here at North Shore. World language learning really enables our students to communicate effectively in another language, to develop an understanding of the cultures, and to compare those cultures to their own. So we want our students to be linguistically and culturally prepared to function as globally minded citizens. So as I share with you the program, I also want to begin with the pillars that I feel support the foundation of the language program. So we believe that there are 4 pillars which are an integral part in helping to achieve and nurture a successful, enriching world language program that benefits all students. So first, it's the Board of Ed. Because of your support and placing value on the importance of world language education, preparing our students to graduate as global citizens. And then we have the administrative support, which provides me and my teachers with guidance and professional development opportunities. And I think there's evidence that that exists in our district because of Rob being acknowledged and being the recipient of the Central Office Award by Niswala. Then we have our teachers. Our teachers engage our learners in the love of learning a language. They provide opportunities. Our kids need opportunities to take risks, and they foster language use in order to build the proficiency. Our students are in the world language classrooms investigating, explaining, and reflecting between practices and perspectives of different cultures. And finally, community involvement. I feel that's a very important pillar to the foundation of the program. We have parents who speak native speakers of some of our target languages. They come in, are invited into the school, and they have spontaneous conversations with our students. So this is unrehearsed conversations, really pushing and challenging the students to transfer the skills of performance in the classroom to something that's unrehearsed, unexpected. The support of the community for our local field trips, for our international exchange programs, and also events that bring the community together to appreciate the diversity and perspectives of cultures different than our own. So having these 4 pillars in place helps us achieve our goals as a department. And the goal is we target proficiency growth in 3 modes of communication, where the kids interpersonal, where they're having exchanges back and forth, interpretive, where they're either reading something, listening to something, and interpreting what is being said, and presentational, whether it's a rehearsed presentation or just on the spot having to explain something that they have learned. Second goal is we target cultural competence, where the students are communicating effectively and appropriately in various cultural contents. Students need to understand if they're going to communicate, they may need to adjust what they do to effectively communicate in a different culture. And understanding the values and attitudes and beliefs of a culture. And finally, the third goal is the embodiment of the SVOs. Our students are problem solving, they're communicating, they're analyzing, they're making comparisons and connections, they're innovators, they're creating products and solving problems. So those goals are able to exist because of the pillars that I spoke about. Now, our program begins at the elementary level in kindergarten. So kindergarten, first and second graders all study Mandarin. In second grade, the students have the option of continuing their Mandarin studies or switching over to Spanish. At the secondary level, we offer 5 languages. And at the high school level, the students then have the opportunity to pick up a 3rd language. So the students are very fortunate that they're able to have this variety of languages. Right now, enrollment, I would say the most subscribed language is Spanish, followed by Italian, followed by Mandarin. So those are the three. So we talk about the benefits.
Sure. And so Latin and French tend to have one section per grade level.
Right.
They're annual. So yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Okay.
You can stay where you are.
Okay.
So there are some core benefits to we know the research is clear that teaching, having children learn a second language at any point, thank you, Betty, at any point in their learning, particularly when they're younger, has long-term benefits to their cognitive growth. The benefits for teaching Mandarin are extraordinary, and so are they in teaching Spanish, but they are a little bit different. And so we wanted to talk with, and this informs some of the directionality that we're thinking about for moving forward in the program, because we think that we probably have an opportunity to get little people benefits to both of these things in some very creative ways. So, for example, the core benefits of studying Mandarin involve the development of accurate hearing and interpretation of sounds because it is so different. Having better interpretation of symbols, right? So when children are studying the characters, minor nuance to the development of the writing of the character can change the total meaning of what they are hearing, reading, or saying. It improves their hand-eye coordination. It improves their math skills. Studying modern languages improves their cognitive functions for sure, and that is very transferable. So because our students study Spanish, that is very transferable to any of the other Romance languages as they get older. So transitions to French and Italian, Portuguese would be much easier. The research shows that it nurtures their curiosity, their cultural sensitivity, their empathy in others. It improves their language proficiency. It improves their verbal and spatial abilities. It enhances their creative thinking, and it makes them more flexible and creative in their approach to how they look at the world. So the benefits of them are essentially undeniable, but a little bit different. And because Mandarin is so different, the research on the brain development is powerful in how it helps children to use their brains in ways that they wouldn't use otherwise. Right? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think
No?
you covered all the points.
I did? All right,
Yes.
good. So let's talk about where we've been as a department.
So, in addressing the shift to having language learning on the path of proficiency, so just want to explain a little bit about that. We've had a shift where the classroom is very student-centered, and the students are the one using the language. Teachers know how to speak the language. They don't need to be practicing. So we've had to have a shift that it's the students. This is the only opportunity that these students may have to actually speak the language. So that's where we're talking about proficiency. We're giving them the language in the classroom so that they can transfer that out and actually apply it. I'm sure many people, a lot of times I speak to them like, I took 8 years of Spanish and I can't say a word. So we don't want our students to be saying that. We want our students to leave here being able to speak the language. So in addressing that shift, to use the language, some of the things that the department has engaged in the last couple of years, we've had vertical and horizontal articulation. We need to make sure that we have certain skills at one level and then that we're spiraling those skills and then pushing them so that we can move them to the next level of proficiency. As a department, we have also identified and created global benchmarks using proficiency language from ACTFL. Now, this work that we did with the benchmarks began our transition from checkpoints to performance targets. So we're shifting from, this is a level 1, level 2, to you're a novice low, novice mid, intermediate high. So we're using that language to identify where the student is and how much they have grown. We have created and we use can-do statements where we're able to articulate what the student can do with the language. Our language learning is functional, so what are our students doing? They are interacting, they're negotiating meaning, they're sharing information, interpreting. So our statements identify what the students are able to do with the language. We've also begun the development of IPAs, Integrated Performance Assessments. These are assessments that you integrate all 3 modes of communication with one common theme. So that's something, again, helping our students really work toward that proficiency. And we've also had professional development in the World Readiness Standards for language learning, the 6 core practices for increasing language acquisition, can-do statements, organic world language, and cultural competence. So the professional development that we've engaged in, we're seeing, the impact in the classroom. So when we think about how we improve, strengthen, and grow our program, we think about it in a very circular way. We have our core pillars, which lead us and set us up for our goals, and then we monitor that progress. The progress informs us and leads us to celebrating success, but also to reevaluating and changing the course of what we are doing. Using the data, we think critically and clearly about what needs to be addressed, and then we make a plan. So this process is dynamic and evolutionary, resulting in continuous improvement in the World Language Department. So at this time, I also want to highlight, so those are things that we have been working on to make that shift to proficiency, but I would also like to highlight some of the department's accomplishments, which are due to the collaborative endeavor. We are the recipient of the FLES Outstanding Program. We have an interactive and informative newsletters at the elementary level. This gets the families involved in their child's language learning, and I have also heard parents say, oh no, this is my opportunity to learn too. So it even engages parents to want to learn another language. We have authentic experiences. In one of our elementary schools, we established a pen pal exchange with Colombia, and the students, they wrote, letters, old-fashioned way. They were sent, and we have pictures of the students in Colombia reading the letters. They'll respond, and then we will culminate with a Skype exchange so that the students will again have the opportunity in an unrehearsed way to communicate with other students their age in a different country and ask questions and learn about them. So we're very excited about that connection that we made. We've also had many winners in our local and state language competitions that are now looking for that level of proficiency. We have seen an increase in the number of students that are continuing their studies through 12th grade. For a while, we had a drop-off after 10th grade, and we're seeing many more students continue and seeing the value and the importance of maintaining their language studies. We also implemented the Seal of Biliteracy 3 years ago, and this year we're actually awarding 54 seniors with the Seal of Biliteracy. And what that tells us is that these students have achieved a level of intermediate high, advanced low proficiency level.
I signed them all today.
Oh, you signed them all? Thank you. Now, a part of the can-do statements, it's about identifying what the students can do, but the other purpose that they serve is for students to also reflect and monitor their own individual growth on the continuum of proficiency, so that a student can clearly look, this is what I can do, and this is what I need to work on to move on the continuum. So it serves also for student reflection in their own growth in language. Then, we had 87 seniors this year inducted into the World Language Honor Society. And finally, we are using the Apple Assessment, which is an external tool to gather data. In class, all the assessments is basically its performance. The students learn something, there's some form of assessment. This is an external assessment where the students are not necessarily aware of the topics and what is being done. So they're really being tested here as to what level of proficiency they are. So we're using that as an assessment to inform us what we need to do in the classroom to continue for with their proficiency growth. Okay, so now we have goals.
Great. So where we are looking at going for next year is starting to look at the FLES program and proposing ways to restructure it in order to incorporate some choice and exposure to both languages prior to grade 3. And so some of the things that we are exploring is having our FLES teachers take a more active role during playtime, during resource time, to really increase opportunities for novel use of the language in times when kids are not necessarily in class. We think that it will be, proficiency-based teaching, and it'll give us, as we look at how we're using time and how we incorporate more unstructured playtime for kids throughout the day. We think this has potential to be a good novel way to have kids engaging in language that would be fun. We also are continuing to develop and implement the IPAs that Anna talked about. So increasing the percentage of students that achieve intermediate high and advanced low proficiency on that to get the seals of biliteracy. We want that for all of our students. So the United States is sadly unique in the way that we teach a language, so that it is normal to have one language, where if you travel to other parts of the world, it is unheard of that people would.
Neighbor other countries that speak different languages.
Well, that's.
And the problem is you can go farther than parts of Europe from one end of the United States to the other.
Well, that's.
And then not encounter or have any need for a second language. So even if you learn it, the chances for reinforcement
Of using it
are
as.
much more limited than in a European setting.
True.
The other thing that we want to look at is working with the special ed department, because students are sometimes exempt from world languages, and the value that they get from learning a world language is incredible. They should not lose out. We're graduating the students to be globally minded citizens. They need to be in our classrooms. And with the proficiency, because we're using the proficiency-based level, you can really cater and differentiate in the class. And even if other students are, let's say, novice high, and I have a special ed student who's novice low, he's tracking his own growth. And what takes one student from one proficiency level to the next could be the level of detail in the discourse. It could be the questioning techniques. But that student will still demonstrate growth at their pace. And it's giving them the exposure to learn a second language, which I think is really critical for all students to have that access to languages. And let me find just the offerings, the level 1 offerings.
Yes.
That we want to see, right now we alternate level 1 offerings at the high school. So if a student wants to pick up that third language, we offer 2 languages, and then we alternate 2 different languages the following year. So looking at, let's just offer them all and see what, which one is the one of greatest interest. Because right now I feel we limit the students. They may want Italian, that's the year that Italian isn't offered. So if we just offer everything and then see what the student choice is and go from there.
I was curious how many students are interested in picking up a third language? And are they adding one or are they switching?
Usually they're adding. I don't have the numbers, how many, but it's usually kids adding, or a student who comes in maybe from another school. So there's different reasons why we have that level 1.
Right. The other classes that we have been adding are the heritage classes, right? So kids who arrive and they are native speakers, that we're able to offer them language instruction at a more advanced level.
Okay.
So that is where we are. That is sort of our thinking for moving forward. Are there any questions or comments for Anna or I or me? No? Great.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think that's a good idea to have the level 1 offered across all languages, and that's going to happen for next year. Is that my understanding? Last year it was only level 1, or for this current year only level 1. I know level 1 Spanish was offered.
No, this was something that we would look in for the following year. So
okay, so not next year.
Not next year.
Okay.
No,
and
the following year.
I would certainly support that. I just have a question about the national language exams. Like you have the national Latin exam, Spanish. Are those good measures to evaluate our program, or?
Okay, so the national language exams are not linked, they're not aligned with the national standards. It's much more grammar oriented, and we've had a shift nationally into more of that proficiency based. So it's like the old way of learning language, conjugating the verbs. And so it's not aligned with our national standards or our program. However, the students, we do offer it to the students if they choose, like this year, if students were interested in taking the exam, we did offer it to them. In the past, everyone, they qualified and we gave it to them, but then we realized it just really wasn't measuring. It wasn't aligned with what we were doing. But we didn't want to take the opportunity away from students that did do well, because that's the way, they like the grammar. So it is offered to them, but it's not something that we do automatically.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. Great presentation. There's great work being done. The idea of sort of the FLES being taken out of a classroom and into more of a conversational, where the kids maybe don't realize they're learning, but they are, is aces. I love it. This year, I guess there was an attempt made to allow students who didn't choose Spanish in that second grade decision-making year, but wanted to get into 5th, and it didn't necessarily find enrollment. Are there other ways to catch those students who might want to do that, who maybe chose Mandarin but realized they want to go back to a Romance language, Spanish particularly, as opposed to French or Latin or Italian in 5th grade? Or are there other ways to help kids understand the differences or the opportunities between Spanish and Mandarin before they have to make that decision in 2nd grade? 2-part question.
So the middle school, the transition point at the middle school, we agreed that we were going to refer that to the site-based team for next year for study and recommendation. because when students want to make that, if and when they want to make that switch, this year we didn't have anybody. They all stuck with it, and it ended up not being an issue. But in the event that someone does, we want to think about what are the, how do we make that happen in a way that catches them up, right? And so without having to compromise other components of the program.
Sure. Well, one option, I guess, is to offer it similar to the way you're talking about a level 1 offering at the high school level.
Right.
Offer it as the same as you would offer French as a new language, and see if students want that.
Right. And so part of what we're hoping might happen is by finding an opportunity to offer both for a little while, and then having the selection be after an exposure to both might minimize that need for transition as well. But what we don't want to have happen is that once you make a choice when you are 7, that confines you to that choice for the balance of your academic career.
Yep. 17 can be a tough age to make a choice. 7 seems even younger. 2 very quick questions I had. The total enrollments that you gave us, which was really fascinating to see how by grade it differs, and within schools, the percentage of students choosing Mandarin versus Spanish change from year to year. It's not based on a particular elementary school population. It just seems random, but it all kind of seems organically working out where you can staff them appropriately. But the total numbers of students in 6th grade taking language is lower than the overall enrollment. So there are a number of students who aren't taking a foreign language for whatever reason. It seemed like I had like 165 between those 5 different classes.
It might be exemptions.
Okay.
I would have to look exactly at which students are not in there.
Okay.
But I would think it would be exemptions.
Okay, and then opportunity for international travel for the students, is that open to all 5 languages? Is Mandarin, I'm not sure what you're thinking there.
So right now we have it for the 4 languages, and we are looking, Miss Lee and I and Mr. Cousins have been looking into travel to China. So it's in the works. We're just looking at different packages, different things, and just, we're not sure about whether it's going to be an exchange or a visit right now. So, but we're definitely, it's in the research.
Right.
It's in the research phase. And I just if I could, one of the things, I had 2 students last year who really felt strongly about going into Spanish in 6th grade, but we didn't have that opportunity for them. So what I did with the parents, we spoke about it, I sent them all the curriculum and support, and the parents, I said they can definitely step in, and the parents worked with them over the summer. And then the Spanish teachers during lunch supported those 2 students, giving them support for success. So we try to make it work the best we can. When a student really wants to make that switch, we do whatever we can to support them.
Again, I thank you. That's clear in the way that you do it. It's a defining characteristic of our district, not just that offering which people seek out, but also that's a perfect example of educating the whole child and what they need for what they need. So I think people appreciate that very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. One question I have for you is, now that you've switched the program away from grammar to proficiency, one of the things I found with my children when they went to the university was that they lacked grammar, and they were not in your changeover. So I'd be interested to know that when you make the switch, how does it affect them when they have required languages in college? And I know that data is hard for you to gather because it's hard to make college students do anything, never mind report back to you. But it would be interesting to see if that shift is being, the shift that you're doing, which it to a certain degree makes a lot of sense if you want students to speak the language later on. But how does that affect them when they go on to higher learning? at the university level?
So first,
And if they follow that?
Grammar's not lost, it's still, but it's embedded more in context versus a chart and conjugation. So it's not completely lost. The grammar is still a part of the program. And there is actually articulation between high schools right now and higher education about making that shift. So everything, the shift is just happening. Even in New York State, they're looking to officially make this shift effective 2021. So so the shift is slowly happening because everyone is seeing that this is the direction that, it's about using the language and not just knowing the language. So there is articulation happening with universities about changing language instruction even there.
Okay, great. And then the other thing is the idea of having the FLES embedded in the recess time. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I think we tried that with music when we first put in the FLES program, and we offered, I think, music for the students because there was a change in the opportunities. I kind of think kids need recess time and they need downtime, and I'm not sure having another pressure or of academic time for kids who really need free time creatively and socialization is necessarily the best course of action. So I would like maybe some research and more thought given to that. We're already living in a high pressure society on Long Island. We do crazy stuff when it comes to student achievement as a group overall because of where we live. That doesn't occur necessarily in other parts of the country. And I just think kids need time to just be kids.
We agree. We haven't decided anything yet. We want to think this through and talk with the teachers and talk with some parents and talk with kids about the extent to which this even makes sense. We don't know how practical it is or not, but we, sort of in the musings of how can we use, are there opportunities for us to have kids using language in ways that aren't stressful, right, or not, that are very novel. This is an idea that we're kicking around, we'd like to explore more, but we haven't committed to anything one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think that 30 minutes at a 6-day cycle is really meaningful for children, for proficiency. I think, when you go to other societies, they talk about China and how proficient the children are in English. They get English every single day. So clearly we need to have more opportunities for it, and if you could integrate it into the curriculum in a different manner, in terms of, I know when my son was in kindergarten, he had the good fortune to have a bilingual teacher, so she would teach them in both English and Spanish, and that's a really more, I think, authentic way to learn the language. But it was just luck of the draw. Just some thoughts.
Yes, I agree. We need more frequency. I think that's it from the board. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you very
much.
much. And again, thank you for your support.
All right. Our next discussion is our K-12 literacy program audit.
This is like the Iron Man board meeting.
Iron Man.
board meeting.
And you're about to get in the water.
Holy cow. Pass my bedtime.
Oh, yeah.
I promise you I'll keep this short.
This one is pretty brief.
Way past.
Right.
You gonna move up public comment?
Not at, we have the policy review too. Do we need to? I mean,
Maybe we can do the literacy thing first.
yeah, I would do the literacy thing. If you want to do it before the policy thing, we can.
Okay.
Take it away.
Great, thanks. So I've provided the board with some data, if you will, prior to the board meeting, but for the purposes of the listening audience at home. We had finished our literacy audit. Well, I shouldn't say finished the audit. We finished the visits from the person who was doing the audit today. As I mentioned to you earlier, the consultant doing the audit was spending one day in each of our buildings, one full day interviewing students, interviewing teachers, and visiting classrooms. So those 5 days of visits have concluded today with the high school. I've provided you with numbers in terms of how many students were interviewed throughout the entire district. That's, again, for the viewing public, it's 75 students overall in all 5 schools, 43 teachers who were interviewed, and 30 classrooms that were visited throughout the audit phase. The interesting part, one of the interesting pieces of the audit, I think, and I didn't sit in on them because it would kind of defeat the purpose of doing the audit in a anonymous way, but for the students who spoke to the auditor or the consultant doing the audit, she was very impressed with what the students could talk about in terms of their reading and writing learning. She found that very impressive, and what the students had to do is they had to bring with them when they spoke to the consultants, bring work that they were doing in their classes and speaking to what the work was and why they were doing it, both reading and writing. Much of the results, obviously, of the audit won't be known until the consultation is completed. The work is supposed to be done by the middle of June. So we will have a preliminary report. I believe the last I spoke to her was June 13th, and then a final report being given to us by June 18th. So we'll have more of the results of that audit at that point. In addition to the visits to the schools, we have provided the consultant with quite a few documents, binders of documents for the person to look at. Among those documents, as I think I had mentioned, were curriculum maps and standardized assessments and students receiving services through support services. But also in that document review were binders. Every single teacher K through 12 who teaches literacy or English submitted 3 sample works of their students. And the idea was to submit an example of the work that was done by students that was students who were below grade level, if you will, or performing below grade level, students who were on grade level, and students who were above grade level. So if you think about all the people who teach English, that was 3 documents per teacher, quite a few documents that the person will be looking through. So between now and the June 13th preliminary report, the consultant will be looking through all that material that we provided her to finish her review and then start to make recommendations to the district based on that review. I'm sorry, finally, the last piece of what I want to report to you is we also are sending out, beginning tomorrow, a survey to parents, and we broke down the survey by a survey of parents K to 5, a survey for the middle school parents, and then the survey for the high school parents. That information from that survey will also be used, provided to the consultant and used in her review. If you have any questions, I included in your backup material just a reminder of what the questions were. I know we had showed them to you in December, and you had a chance to comment on that, but I just wanted to make sure that you had that as some information too.
So, thank you very much. I just have a couple observations that were passed along to me by some of the members of the faculty and some of the students, was that this was a very difficult time to have, someone in their classroom. Focus really goes down this time of year. It was my understanding, I could be wrong, but that the auditor, the person who was in there was in a 7th grade classroom the day after they went to Philadelphia, which was probably not the best day either for the parents or the students to participate. And I also think there was the communication to some of the faculty. They weren't clear on what the point of this was or the role. I heard comments that it was board mandated, which of course it was not board mandated. And some of the teachers were expressing some concern that they were not asked about teachers' colleges and what their experience was in a more comprehensive manner, where they would be surveyed or had the opportunity to speak directly with the administration. So I think, I guess a learning experience on this would be when we're doing these type of things that maybe we should plan them. I don't know when the best time is because there's always something going on, right? You don't want to do it in December, because of the holidays. You don't want to do it in the middle of testing season. So I know there are limited windows of opportunities, but maybe May is not the best time to be doing these kind of things, and that when we communicate with our teachers, that we communicate clearly what the goals and the purpose of the evaluation is.
Unfortunately, I can't speak to all those because those concerns didn't come to me. But what I can say is in terms of the timing, we had discussed that quite a bit. And as you mentioned, Marianne, there's no time is a good time in a sense. We begin state exams in April. We have March state exams, so we didn't want to intrude on those. We had IB and AP exams in May, so we didn't want to do it then. The best time to be able to do it and was try to work around all those dates and all those times. So I hear what you're saying about the times. We unfortunately were somewhat at the mercy of when the consultant was available to do the visits of the 5 days. So I hear what you're saying about that. I don't know why somebody would say it was a board mandated, but it was certainly one of the board goals this year to look at the ELA program. So I'm not sure how that was communicated or interpreted by the person who you may have spoken to about that, but I'll definitely look into that. Okay, you're welcome.
Anything else from the board? Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, trustees, I'm going to make the next discussion we have is a policy review, so I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda again to move public comment up. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? All right, then, next on our agenda, magically, is public comment. If anyone has anything they would like to share with the board, please give us your name and town of residence, and keep in mind that we have several pages of agenda left to cover, including 40 pages of policy review, but we're all ears.
Sorry. As someone, who's uniquely qualified to give an opinion, I normally wouldn't do this, but I'm curious to see what Mr. Gulati's take on the limits, the homework limits, what kind of impact that could have on AP, IB exam deficiencies and the ability to score well enough to obtain college, to be eligible for college credit.
They did address that in the presentation, where they indicated that once you hit over 120 minutes of total homework, that there was a negative impact on achievement, and there was, a good bit of research presented on that.
From Mr. Gulati's point of view, whether thoughts on that one.
It's public comment.
I think it's a tough balancing act, because depending upon the student, and this was addressed in terms of looking at times. The times, I think, are just averaged, because you can't really put a hard and fast piece on there. There's certain students, for example, Izzy Lehrman doesn't need as much time to study physics as most of the kids in the class. So I would say, by and large, in a technical course like that, most of the students generally would need a little bit more time than those figures were indicating. But then again, you have to, Tim's point was really well made. It was something I was going to ask, but he beat me to the punch, because you can assign these things, but if there's not thoughtful, feedback and reflection on what's being done, then it's really not worth doing it. I don't think that's what happens here. My experience has been the people that are doing the work are thoughtful and are doing what they need to do. So I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, for the things that I did, when I looked at AP Chemistry and AP Physics, they were particularly time-intensive for most students, probably more so than some of the other subjects.
In terms of the foreign languages, Is there a reason why we do not offer a choice from K to 2 between Spanish and Mandarin?
Not that I can ascertain, and we think that's an important distinction that we'd like to explore moving forward.
And just in terms of to reiterate what the presenter said, and what Trustee Russo had said, I think especially at those younger levels, I think it's almost a missed opportunity to not have more time spent on foreign language. When they're young, their ability to absorb it is so much further than when they get older. So I would love to see
We agree.
you guys challenge yourselves to figure out a way to increase the time spent on that, especially in those early years.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah, that's what we've been discussing.
One last thing on one of the agenda items that's coming up. I don't know if I'm going to make it through. The sub-reserve fund, I'm just curious as to what is the need for that, and like why is that, I guess, how would we expect to use that in the future? Like why is that coming up now, I guess?
So the law only just changed to allow those, but TRS and ERS are, separate systems that we have to pay for. So should you have a spike in one, we currently only have a reserve fund to cover one. If we had a spike in the other, we can only get that from gutting the budget or, the tax levy.
Is there an anticipation of a need for this, or is this just a just-in-case kind of thing?
All of the pension costs can be incredibly spiky, right? Every time, like as we saw after the last recession, right, we had enormous variation in what our costs were year to year. So that's why you need it. Name and town of residence.
Andrew McCary, Glen Head. First, I just wanted to say thank you for charging us to look at homework of those very interesting committee. I just want to make one point of clarification. I think that goes with what you were saying, Rob, and maybe it was just miscommunicated up here. In terms of the AP IB classes, it wasn't 20 minutes of homework. It's 20 additional minutes of homework for each of those classes. So that might answer your question. In terms of the foreign language presentation, just a couple of things. I think it would be great if from K to 2, or at least maybe 3 to 1, the students received half of the year Spanish, half of the year Mandarin. They had exposure to both. I think it's very well intentioned to give additional foreign language experience and exposure. I just don't want that to be at the sacrifice of more science and social studies, which I would consider to be really, unfortunately, a little underrepresented in terms of time in elementary school. The other thing, which I have been thinking about for a long time, and I'm glad to have this opportunity to mention it today, I would love for American Sign Language to be taught in the district. I think this could help address the exemption issue. For students who struggle to read and write in English, I think it could be completely overwhelming to take on the task of doing that in a foreign language, but to give them the opportunity to learn sign language, which bypasses those skills yet still activates the same part of the brain neurologically. New York State recognizes American Sign Language as being, as fulfilling the requirement for graduation. And when you think about 14% of people in the country are deaf or hearing impaired, I think it could be very useful. I learned, the sign language here at Glen Head from Mrs. Pisafia in 3rd grade, and I used it for 2 weeks, and I used it more in my life than I used Latin for the 6 years here at North Shore. So I hope that you can consider that. I think that's a nice thing to do. It also sends a nice message to people who make up the disabled population.
Thank you.
Jim Svensson, Glenwood Landing. I just wanted to address a couple of things that, questions that we had about homework. First, I want to thank Carol and Seth, who really took care of a committee that was pretty intense at times. So I think they did a great job, and I want to thank them for their work. You mentioned before about Dave, about the survey. Survey results for homework especially really scared me because I think Seth mentioned it, but everyone's an expert on homework because they did homework. And so parents that aren't familiar with the research are going to answer based on what they know, and they only know that they did homework. So to me, it's a loaded question. Do they get enough homework? Yeah. Whether that's 10 minutes or an hour, for the most part, especially elementary school parents feel they had enough. And all the research for elementary school homework shows that there is no achievement gained based on homework. So, I'm always a little careful with reading those results on that. And I wanted to say that it just takes guts. Like, it takes guts to make a change like this, or any change with this kind of thing, in a drastic way the other way, because everyone expects to do homework. And so if you make that change, it's important. And I think it's similar to and I agree with you about offering recess flex, or flex, or however you say it. It scares me that we have 0 periods, and it scares me that we have kids not eating lunch in the high school. My kids are only in 3rd grade. I won't let them do that. And if it means they're not going to get into a college, well, that's a choice we're going to make as a family. But when it's really the job of the board and the administration to put limits on what kids should be doing for their well-being and for their health and for what's good for them. And if parents don't like that choice, they have to make a decision on where to go to school then. Like, I think we have to be careful on how much we expect kids to do, because stress, and again, Seth touched on it, these things are causing kids to have terrible, terrible times as they're getting older. And if we don't make limits, and we don't put those limits on for the health of those students, I think we're doing them a disservice. So I just want to be careful. My kid won't take flex at recess. I won't allow it, and I'll make that choice. But I don't think I should have to make that choice. I think that the board and the administration needs to make that choice for the good and the well-being of the child. Thank you.
Can I just clarify something? We're not looking to add another. Yeah, I want to be clear about what the intention of what we're exploring here. We're not looking to add another schedule of FLES to recess or anything. We're looking to find novel ways to position our language teachers so kids have access to Spanish, Mandarin in different places. Right, so it's not we're not adding to the schedule. I want to be really clear about that. That's not our intention.
My name is Amy Goldstein. I'm a parent at Glen Head. First, I wanted to say that I was so impressed. I'm not on the homework committee, but I was so impressed by the work that you did, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to be implemented. I also wanted to say it was really great to see that I have a son in 6th grade who doesn't have an issue with homework, but I know other parents whose kids are in other sections who have a tremendous amount of homework, so I'm happy to see that there is going to be some more uniformity, and I think that's wonderful. The other issue I had is that, in terms of homework, is that with the Chromebooks, that some people touched upon having all the distractions with their cell phones and other things. On the Chromebooks, I'd like to see maybe the board look into the fact that the children could only be doing their homework and maybe not distracted on the Chromebooks with the accessibility of playing video games, other things that the Chromebook allows them. So I think that that's an issue, and I would like to see maybe the board look into that as an issue, also as a distraction for the children who are supposed to be just doing their homework or their schoolwork on those Chromebooks.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else?
Hello, my name is Brendan. I live in Seacliff. I was a member of the committee as well. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, the board, for the level of questions you asked after Seth's presentation. going to that number of meetings and hearing the questions that you had to ask really showed that you valued our opinions and our thoughts on this. So I do thank you for that. I know it's a unique opportunity we have in this district to get so involved, and I really do appreciate it. Just a quick point I wanted to make about homework that came up frequently. Ms. Russo, you mentioned it, a couple others mentioned about that idea of getting home at 9. And I think one thing that's critical to understand that for a younger student, getting home at 3 is tough enough too. So as we talk about homework, and we're having some really valuable conversations about high school and middle school and the overscheduling there, K1, 2, 3, just keeping it together for a day can be difficult. So we want to value, that, kind of keep that ratio in perspective, that for that high school kid getting home at 9, it's also that little one getting home at 3 or 3:30, depending on aftercare situations, that they're spent as well at that time. So I think that's kind of important to consider when you look at any policy to consider. Likewise with the reading, we all value the importance of reading there. We want to make sure that's mentioned. I think one thing that I'm proud of with this district and a lot of the work that you're doing now is talking about the mental health and the well-being of students. And although eliminating homework or changing homework policy isn't the solution, and there's a lot of other areas that we have to worry about, it is one tangible thing that we can look at and one tangible change that we could make. And I recognize that for every parent here, mostly here, saying, limit homework, you probably get equally number of calls saying we need more homework. Exactly. and I think that's important, and we recognize that it's all across the board, and that's where we talk about parent education and really, and Jim mentioned this too, kind of, you've heard the parents, or you've heard a small group of parents anyway, and now we really leave it to you, the board and administration, to say, this is the research, this is where our students are at. What can we do to actually make this changes, and what can we do to actually get into the classrooms and talk to those teachers about why this is important and why we're doing it. I don't think anybody sets out to torture kids with homework. We all do it for the right reasons, or we think we're doing it for the right reasons. So just the more education, I think, the better. So thank you so much for listening to our committee.
Thank you. I was hearing me say, I believe there's still some other members of.
Hi, my name is Tammy White. I live in Seacliff, and just quickly I'd like to share with you my son's experience this year. You may have had conversations about this, but he's a 6th grader, and I have really felt that he's been tremendously overburdened with homework. He's with a group of students, high-achieving students, motivated students, conscientious students. For them, saying, your parent can write a note and after you work for an hour just wouldn't do. So we have endured a full year, and I guess this has been going on for years, and at the end of it, we're almost done. So I'm speaking here only for the benefit of the younger children going into 6th grade so that this doesn't happen. Again, thank you so much to our homework committee, and Seth and Carol were amazing. We really spent a lot of time together, and appreciate their work and understanding, because I've gotten to have these conversations with them. I also wanted to touch on the inconsistency, because as Amy was saying, some of the kids, and her son did not have this experience, a completely different 6th grade experience, a whole year of being able to socialize, do extracurricular activities, acclimate to middle school. My son didn't have that opportunity at all. Nothing changed, and I did try. I had spoken to people, and nothing changed, and he sort of got into the routine and just programmed to a life that should really be a parent decision. It's something that I was not comfortable with. When I look back, it's something that wasn't healthy, that isn't healthy, it isn't right, and it shouldn't happen to kids. It should be a parental decision if you choose to do extra work with tutor time or something like that. But for the life of a 6th grader, which K to 6 is really considered elementary, to be consumed by schoolwork, in school and out of school, with very little time for anything else. He came in an enthusiastic student, loved to read for pleasure, no time for that. Well, he still enjoys the school reading, but there's no time for extra books. He came in so excited about science and social studies, cutting out articles. in newspapers. I didn't know he had this love of history and current events. And then, a few weeks into it, where's our news reporter? No time for it, just keeping afloat. And I can share with you, I won't right now, but I had logged for a week how much time he was spending on each subject. And while I feel that the teachers are so dedicated and so involved and really truly believe in their work, it was just, there was some kind of disconnect, not seeing this whole picture of what the life of this 11-year-old, and it's not just my son. I don't want it to, I felt that way. I felt it was always, us having to explain why he's either meticulous about his work or anything. I think this was a very, consistent for the conscientious students on this particular team, and maybe there was another team as well. So I think that, and we touched on this feedback, importance of feedback from students, just a simple, write how many minutes, you spent on that, how that would help teachers guide the homework throughout the year. But as I said, a little frustrated because it's been a whole year, but I'm hoping that for some positive change, so at least we can have an impact on future 6th graders. He's ready for high school, more so than my 8th grader.
Thanks, Tammy. Anybody else? I was like, it's everybody, right? Everyone's gotten to speak. All right, well, that was very public comment. That's lovely. We're, 100%. Okay, we will close public comment and we will return to our policy review. Thank you all.
You don't want to start?
Come on, policy review. Oh. We've lost our audience, people. I know, we shouldn't, why do we let them talk? No. What?
How do you take them?
You want this? I don't know, and it's like, I mean, we're not doing anything remotely meaningful here. I really think we should table it.
I'm okay with
Can we table it?
to the next one.
I think we got to table.
That's okay.
I mean, because, all right, so I'll make the motion and then we'll have the discussion. I would like to make a motion, and if I have a second, we can discuss it further. But I'd like to make a motion that we would table the policy review. Do I have a second?
Second.
I was just going to say it's late, and policies are actually sort of one of our core responsibilities. That is something we are actually required to do, and I'm concerned about the extent to which we can do it well. And it's 40 pages of policy.
Peter, is there any tangible reason why this is going to delay anything?
No, we can bring them to the 13th with the 5,000s. But the 4,000s this would have wrapped up the 4,000 section of our policy review. It's not a problem. We'll deal with it on the June 13th.
I don't feel like we're lazy by not doing this tonight.
No, you are definitely not lazy.
Because we've still got other stuff to do, don't worry.
It's 10:55, you've taken really one action, and that was because you moved something. So you have not been lazy tonight.
That's right, she could still be waiting.
That's right.
And all those kids from Seacliff, because we haven't even gotten to personnel yet.
Correct.
Can I ask a related policy question?
Sure.
Will we have a homework policy articulated?
So, these are yours, sorry. What I would suggest that we do is, we were waiting for this presentation, is take that policy back to the policy committee, which we are in the process of scheduling a meeting, I think next week, the week after, and we'll make that part of our review.
Excellent.
Any other conversation before we vote on the motion to table? All in favor? Oh, look at that. Okay. Oh, look, we're up to comments from the public. We moved that one. We'll just say we moved that one up. Okay, on action item E, which is the balance of the personnel actions, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Yeah, there we go. All in favor? Action item F is the acceptance of the Canvas statement and the election results. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Congratulations to all my colleagues who were reelected.
We're thinking about resigning after this meeting.
We realize now the terrible, terrible mistake we made.
What was I thinking?
Yes.
Oh my God, well said.
Yes. Yes, congratulations to all of you on having money to run the district.
Well, we
Yeah,
thank you for your
next year.
support, and we thank our taxpayers for supporting it.
Action.
And busing.
And busing, yeah, no kidding. Actions G and H are acceptance of donations from the First High School PTO for the video projector and the screen and charging devices at a value of about $12,000, and the donation from Damian Ross of Seacliff of $500 to the Seacliff School. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Questions, comments?
I have a quick question. Charging towers in the gym?
Yes. They're for kids to plug their cell phones into.
In the gym.
That's where they want them.
Okay.
Well, they don't use them on
That
their
just
gym,
sounds
so they
very
can
interesting.
recharge them.
Yeah.
It's where they want them and where they're generally not
you
using
go.
them.
Anything else? Motion? Oh, sorry. We already did that. All in favor? Thank you. Action I is approval of the budget transfers. Do I have a motion? Motion. A second? Questions?
I have a question.
Trustee?
So on the budget transfers, we have transfer for library books, and we have a transfer for the Victorian House. So we took the money for the Victorian House out and put it for library books, and now we have to now put money back in for the Victorian House. I understand that it's a different use, but we did take the money out. Now we're putting it back in. And the other thing I have a question on, are these budget transfers for the library books, are they in addition to the $30,000 that's been allocated for the budget next year for library books? And are they different from any kind of fund balance use
So they're
that
all.
at the end of the year?
So it's all interrelated. Yes, it is in addition to the monies that we budgeted for next year. However, that money was not, that we put into the libraries was not 30,000. It was less than that. It was more like 12.
No, it was 30. The line item in the Victorian House was $30,000.
It was also to cover salaries for some new hires.
Oh, the line item was $30,000 for the Victorian House.
Right, and we took it was 30, I think it was either 30 or 36,000. 21,000 of that went into
Salary.
Went into salary. Right.
Could I ask a quick question? Is there some sort of so we're allocating these monies towards the library in down a couple of different avenues. Is there a plan, like how are you ascertaining the value of library books and materials for each library? Is there a magical wish list from each librarian or the building that says this will support our learning here? Are we looking at these expenditures strategically in terms of what our 21st century libraries are going to be looking like?
Yep. So all of that is true. We met with myself included, we met with the library media specialists from across the district. We know that the middle school has the greatest need for their collection. So if you recall that we, a few meetings ago, we talked about what's the appropriate level of books that should be in a library. That the middle school library has in their collection 8,000 books, and the average age of those books is 17 years.
I'm amazed it's that many. Because
It's
there's like 2 staff.
it's really
Pathetic.
it's a shame. No, it's really a shame for and so the middle school library needs the most, which is why the allocation to the middle school library is so substantial. I don't even think that level will get her to where we want that library to be.
What is the overall average age of the circulation in the elementaries?
I don't know that offhand. It's the collections are much fresher. When we looked at the elementary libraries and we looked at the quantity of books across the schools, we know that Glenwood Landing and Glen Head needed more like physical books. But the librarians were going to spend time thinking about what was the most impactful way to use those monies, whether that be through databases, through research books, through regular text. But the investment in the core libraries has been really important to us.
In terms of equity and some cultural competence, do we have some collections that are in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking students who are coming in with Spanish as their native language, and maybe they're learning English, and to deny them the opportunity to read in their native language, even though they're learning English, I think is something we should be thoughtful
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. We'll follow up on that. Okay. Any other questions? Nope.
Was that all on budget transfers?
I think so.
We still need to vote on budget transfers.
Yes, you do.
That's where we
Yes.
are you ready? All in favor? Thank you. Action J is the approval to dispose of inventory. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second? Thank you. All in favor? K, approval of the resolution to authorize the purchase of a textbook. This is our new introduction to chemistry text. I'm so sorry. I guess it's late. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. L is the aforementioned resolution to establish the Retirement Contribution Reserve Sub-Fund. Do I have a motion? A second? Trustees, do you have any questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Action M is the approval of 3 health services contracts. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And the second. Questions? All in favor? N is award of 1920 cooperative bids. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
And the second. Questions? All in favor? O is the approval of a special education tuition agreement. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? P, approval of special education services, the IEPs. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? And the very fabulous action item Q, which is the acceptance of the donation from Perry King of a grand piano and bench valued at over $12,000. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, we do have a second public comment period. Public?
Pleasure, Brendan.
You good? All right, that takes us up to old business. We had bulleted and can start with, we were going to have a discussion on whether we wish to add public members to the construction steering committee.
I do.
I'd like to. Yes?
Yeah, support it.
How many do we want? 2?
I was going to say 2. I toyed with the idea of 3 for a while, but then I thought, why don't we start with 2 and see how it goes?
You may not have room at the conference table.
Yeah, that's a good point. I thought 2.
2?
And I thought we could make the policy committee come up with, the policy that says things about. We're just going to copy the audit committee. Well, we can't do this. I was going to say, our audit committee policy still has issues that I think we haven't fixed also, so.
And I have small business on that too.
Do, on audit?
On policies that need review that we've talked about before.
Okay.
Okay. 2 people, the goal, of course, is, capitalize on outside expertise that exists in the community and to be transparent. Should we say something like 3-year terms?
For the construction steering?
Yeah, what do you think? You don't want to interview every year all the time. 'Cause
No.
You don't want to never
Well,
consider it, right?
3 years, we will not be on the board. So.
Won't be our problem. I thought 3 sounded about right. I don't know about you.
Do you want to stagger them, or do you want them simultaneously?
If we stagger them, you end up interviewing all
Well,
the
you could
time,
do
yeah.
2 years and 3 years if you want. I don't know, I don't know, I'm just afraid that asking people for a 3-year commitment might scare them away.
Oh, you might be right. Too. Sure, go ahead.
So,
You want to just talk about in the policy committee and come back with something?
no. What I was thinking maybe is, maybe since this is new, maybe you do it as a 1-year term.
That's what we did in the audit committee, we tried it for a year.
And then.
That's true.
Renewable.
And then we
you
just
can,
never let
We
them
know it.
leave. We're like,
and then you can see where you want to go at the end of the first year.
But you guys are envisioning a similar process, right? We'll send out mailing like we did, where you fill out an application.
we did
we'll review
ads.
them, we'll interview the same kind of, yeah, okay.
Fair?
Yep.
So 2 members, 1-year term. We can talk about the solicitation of membership because we need to deal with audit. We need to now deal with construction steering. Are there any other board committees that you,
I think that makes us good for now.
okay, great. All right. So we're on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we had talked about the bylaws for Legislative Action Committee that need to be reworked. I took a first stab at it, so I think it's a discussion that the entire board should have. This is a biggie. So I'd like to put this on the agenda for next time. Maybe we can, I'll send around what I have and before next meeting, and we'll take a look and have a discussion on it.
Yes.
That's 2 more items for the next meeting. I'm just keeping track.
It's just like, I just can't.
I'm bringing my nightgown next time.
Pajama party. The kids have pajama day, we'll have pajama day. Looking at upcoming meetings, so we have June 3rd, just logistically, we have June 13th. We have reorg on July 11th, and we have nothing until August 29th proposed. So, yeah, we're going to be posting these things and advertising. We should, if we want to get any kind of good contribution from the community, we got to get on it.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So it's really when we solicit, I'm sorry, so when we're soliciting for community membership, we're really soliciting for audit, construction steering, and LAC.
Well, depending on what we decide with LAC, we may or may not need to, but.
Okay. So why don't I just leave it there as a placeholder for now, and then we can decide.
Do you have a head count on LAC? It was vague for me as to who was coming back.
You know, I meant to check it today. I didn't have that, but I believe, right now we have 10 members of LAC, not 11.
Right, but I don't know how many of those are coming back.
I will have to check. I believe, I don't know, Betty, you'll send me that information, we'll get it around? You have the roster? Great.
I don't remember if Cheryl asked if they were coming back or not. I mean, she may well have done that, and I just do not remember it.
We have our next LAC June 12th?
13th.
Okay, so. we'll
Can't
make
be
sure
the
to-
13th.
No, it's the 12th.
Oh, no, let me look. It's on
Board
my
meeting's the 13th. 12th? So we'll make sure to get a good count then. That'll inform our decision.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful.
Further old business?
No, it's the 12th. You're right.
I don't know if it's old or new. You did, Peter did share with us the site-based decision
Yes, I did.
committees and what they'd been up to.
Yes.
So, which was very interesting, appreciated. It certainly was a range of how much got accomplished or not, and I think they were used in a range of ways.
Yes, they
that made
were.
me feel like it's possible we need some sort of review of like, this is what the law requires these committees to do. And that could
There's-
well be true of other committees as well. I'm not saying no.
Well, that is, no truer words may have ever been said.
Shared
So-
decision when I was on it 100 years ago in Glen Head, and also at some other school, I forget which one. It really was focused on issues that were somewhat particular to that school and sometimes to that elementary. Like one of the things we worked on was there were such variations in the curriculum was getting, a common language across all 3 grades so that the expectations going into middle school as to what was covered so the middle school teachers have what was covered, but much of it was centered around the particular school.
That's the way it ought to be. I mean, we're going to spend some time with the principals over the summer.
And talk about,
Get some real- yes.
potentially with a lot of our committees when we kick off.
Say that again, please.
Potentially with a lot of our committees when we kick off the new year, we might need to be more clear about
Yes.
which ones have requirements in the law for what they're
Yes.
supposed to be doing. It's getting late. For the old business, for the new business, do we know our vaccination rates?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So there was a question about, I did not do the math, but I can give you the raw numbers.
Fair enough.
Okay. Here it is. All right, so within the district, there are 66 students who have a exemption for vaccinations. At Glen Head, there are 5 students. Glenwood Landing 12, Seacliff 11, middle school 18, high school 20, and of those 66, only 3 are medical. The rest are religious.
Oh, it's like I don't.
2 medicals. 2 medicals at Glenwood Landing, 1 medical at the high school.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't calculated that,
The whole. Yeah.
but I will. But
Um,
those are the numbers.
But like if it's 11 at Seacliff, that's a smaller percent than what was in
What
the
what you sent me,
database
yes.
that they were looking at.
Yeah, but these are real numbers from this year.
Okay. Peter also gave us a list of board meeting dates for next year, which you should review. You may glance at quickly now, so if there is a problem,
Yeah, just let me know. We can
let him
always
know.
move them around.
Because the infamous calendaring meeting will be coming up, and
That August 29th meeting, sometimes it's August 26th, sometimes it's August 24th. Whatever date you pick, that is college week. For anyone who has kids that are being dropped off at college, you may have a hard time getting a
that's
quorum. I will actually be here because my son is dropping himself off this year, which I think is a great idea. I'll share that with the rest of you who are new to this game, but dropping himself off is really appealing.
All right, so anybody who has, I guess, Tim and Lisa, if you...
I have 3.
Yeah, so...
But they'll be gone by the 29th.
All
I'm
right.
making sure of it.
Okay. All right, you can let me know. We have time. We have time.
Yeah, but that's always a hard week, and sometimes you don't even know until August, when you're dropping them off.
Yep. Anything else? Old, new? I bet you guys all have 6 things written down. Everybody's just like, never mind.
That's exactly
Close my folder.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Which is part of the plan, isn't it? No new business, you're laid it out.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.